Chapter 323. Fuck. 55. He defeated everyone from the peak of the early stage to the peak of the mid-stage nascent soul realm. More than 50 people, and all of them are stronger than their cultivation level. He doesn't seem to have used up much energy. This is his true strength, right? Even Chun Hao can't compare to him. Damn, how can he hide his aura so well? Our cultivation levels aren't low, right? I'm a half-step incarnation realm cultivator, but I can't even sense his aura. How can we fight him? Me too. Strange, how can his concealment skills be so good? In the Sky City, Chun Hao and Chun Shui also showed amazing concealment skills. Did he learn it from Chun Hao? A disciple who had entered the Sky City said with a frown. He clearly remembered that in the last month when the Sky City opened the core palace area, Chun Hao and Chun Shui only revealed their aura when the transmission light pillar appeared. Today's Lung Yihan had displayed such a powerful concealment technique as soon as he appeared. Every opponent was effortlessly defeated in one move at the smallest cost. One had to know that the arena used for the intersect competition did not conceal all auras. This was to let the disciples watching the battle gain the most. Therefore, the disciples who were closest to Lung Yihan were all shocked when they saw his battle. Even Xia Yuyu, Chu Qingtian, and the others were shocked. 70. Gasps of astonishment could be heard from the crowd. No one had expected Lung Yihan to be so powerful. Moreover, there were still no signs of him being overdrawn. What did this mean? Although Lung Yihan was in the early stage incarnation realm, ants could still kill an elephant. This was a continuous battle. To kill an ant, you would have to stomp your feet and waste some energy, right? Moreover, the opponent was not an ant. There was a difference in cultivation levels, but as a disciple of a 9th-rank sect, who didn't have powerful skills, the power he showed was absolutely terrifying. But looking at the situation, Lung Yihan was likely to kill 100 people. This was a miracle that had never happened before in the cultivation world. How his concealment skills are amazing. Even if I meet him, I can only sense him when he attacks. Xia Yuyu stared at Lung Yihan, who had once again disappeared from everyone's sight, and finally couldn't help but send a voice transmission to Chun Hao. Yes, this was to completely restrain one's aura and merge it with everything in the world. Before he attacks, unless it's someone 2 levels higher than him, I'm afraid it's really difficult to sense him. However, you don't have to worry. He wouldn't dare to use this kind of concealment technique when facing a powerful opponent. Chun Hao whispered. Perhaps only Chun Hao was not surprised by Lung Yihan's performance. In the past, Lung Yihan's carving skills were 1 or 2 levels higher than Chun Hao's. Now Chun Hao, who had not practiced carving for a long time, was still inferior to Lung Yihan in this aspect. But Chun Hao didn't care at all, because Lung Yihan's concealment technique was no longer effective against him. It wasn't that Chun Hao could catch him, but that Chun Hao could use the moment Lung Yihan released his aura to unleash his strongest attack. This was the result of Chun Hao's crazy cultivation in the past few months. He had already formed an instinctive reaction to the solitary sword tactic in his subconscious. There was no need to calculate, no need to catch. It was like a passive skill. Sister Lanlan said that your concealment skills are also quite good. Lung Yihan and I cultivate the same kind. It's just that my level is slightly lower than his, Chun Hao said with a slight smile. Did he teach you? No. It's a bit complicated. I'll tell you later. Chun Hao hesitated slightly and didn't tell her about his father and Lung Yihan's master. After stepping into the world of cultivation for so long, Chun Hao's knowledge was far beyond that of an ordinary person. The more he knew, the more Chun Hao felt that his father was unfathomable. He was afraid that it wasn't as simple as the Eastern continent. And this kind of carving technique that integrated everything in the world was a supreme existence that Chun Hao couldn't measure. 100. Fuck, 100 people killed. There are only 50 people left in the Piamiao sect. Heavens, there are already 16 peak late-stage nascent soul realm cultivators. There are still 40 peak late-stage nascent soul realm cultivators left, and they will definitely get stronger. 8 half-step incarnations and 2 incarnations. Does this guy want to kill all the peak late-stage nascent soul realm cultivators? Impossible. Didn't you notice that his attacks are taking longer and longer? I reckon that a few more would be his limit. On the rostrum, the pavilion master of the Myriad Pill Pavilion was so excited that he couldn't control himself even if he had a calm temperament. He knew that Lung Yihan was strong, and he knew that Lung Yihan had a height that made him look up 45 degrees. But he didn't expect that Lung Yihan's true strength was so strong. Especially when he saw all the powerful sect masters on the rostrum gasping in shock, he had the urge to roar to the sky. No one wasn't shocked. At this moment, even Chen Hao's light was completely overshadowed by Lung Yihan. The momentum of the two peerless geniuses seemed to have been broken. Lung Yihan became high and mighty, emitting an incomparably bright light. Hold on, hold on, hold on. On the stage, the true essence in Lung Yihan's dantian was on the verge of drying up. But at this moment, he still clenched his teeth and his mind was as calm as water. Only a trace of obsession in his heart resounded in his mind. I have already reached the incarnation realm. If I lose to him again, I'm afraid I'll never be able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. I can't lose to him again, I can't. His obsession was burning. At this moment, Lung Yihan was more determined than ever. Faintly, the scene of Chen Hao and Xia Yuyu sitting together appeared in his mind from time to time. Even Lung Yihan himself didn't know what kind of thoughts this was. In his opinion, it was to surpass Chen Hao. In fact, subconsciously, he had already regarded Xia Yuyu as his biggest opponent. This was a strange feeling. It came from another her. Of course, Lung Yihan's persistence was only in terms of physical strength, true essence, and spirit. From the beginning to the end, he didn't show his trump card or killer move. First, this was not the time to expose it. Second, if he exposed it, his consumption would increase exponentially. It was impossible to defeat so many people in a row. When Lung Yihan completed the 100 slaughter, Chen Hao didn't care much. After all, it was within his expectations. But when Lung Yihan defeated another 16 people, Chen Hao's face showed a trace of surprise. He looked at Lung Yihan with a trace of admiration. Chen Hao could clearly feel that Lung Yihan's consumption had reached the point of exhaustion, but he still had no intention of stopping. This kind of perseverance and tenacity was not something an ordinary person could achieve. And if he was careless, he would pay a heavy price. Finally, when the floating mist sect's disciples' expressions became more and more ugly, more and more serious and fearful, the floating mist sect's sect master felt ashamed, and Gu Xing's expression became shocked and aghast. Lung Yihan appeared and disappeared like a ghost and lightly pierced through the last nascent soul realm disciple. He said, "We lost." But at this moment, the entire martial arts practice field, except for the 9 arenas, was silent. Everyone stared blankly at the pale-faced, but unharmed Lung Yihan. Lost. The 10,000 pill pavilion lost to the floating mist sect. But Lung Yihan won. With his strange and terrifying strength, he won the respect of the hundreds of thousands of people in the martial arts practice field. He defeated the 9th rank floating mist sect's 140 genius disciples by himself, leaving only 10 people. Of the 10 people left, the lowest cultivation was at the half-step incarnation realm. If that was not the case, everyone believed that Lung Yihan would continue to fight. Whoosh! When Lung Yihan floated back to Chen Hao's side like a light breeze, the entire martial arts arena was in an uproar. Lung Yihan looked at Chen Hao and Xia Yuyu's expressions. Although he wanted to say something, he was too weak. His eyes carried a trace of pride and provocation. He glanced at Chen Hao and directly swallowed a large amount of pure spiritual herbs. But Chen Hao's sudden words almost caused this fellow to spit out the spirit medicine that was in his mouth. Always being chased, never being surpassed. You did well this time. Well, it's just not bad. Chen Hao originally didn't want to say anything. After all, the tenacity that Lung Yihan displayed this time was something that even Chen Hao admired in his heart. But this guy was already like this. Why did he come back and give him a provocative look? If he didn't say anything, wouldn't he be too arrogant? You. What about you? Hurry up and recover. Chen Hao avoided Lung Yihan's eyes and leaned back lazily. Okay, I want to see how many you can win in a row. If you lose, you owe me another promise. Lung Yihan stared at Chen Hao and said, 1 is too little. How about 2? Let's settle it in one go. No, only 1 at a time. Lung Yihan frowned slightly and said, After saying that, he couldn't take it anymore and directly entered a half-cultivation state. He had just exhausted his energy. Before the next round, he had enough time to recover. While the two were talking, Xiao Yu looked at them curiously. She already felt that Lung Yihan was strange. But the conversation between the two and Lung Yihan's eyes made her feel even more strange. Xiao Yu couldn't help but feel a chill run down her spine. Moreover, listening to the conversation between the two, Xiao Yu understood that the two seemed to have a deep relationship. The competition was still going on. In the last few rounds of the competition, there was no doubt that every match was of equal strength. In terms of time, it was naturally much slower than the previous 2 days. In the second round, the star-picking sect met another 8th-rank sect, and it was a very strong one. Knowing that he would meet the Sky Sword sect in the third round, Chen Hao was naturally very depressed. Did he do it on purpose? Second update. I have something to do tonight. 2 updates for today. Chapter 324. 34 people from the 8th rank sect had passed the test. 3 of them were at the half step to the incarnation stage, and 10 were at the peak of the late stage nascent soul stage. Just these 13 people alone would consume a lot of Chen Hao's energy. Of course, the premise was that Chen Hao still used the same sword. After thinking for a while, Chen Hao did not make any changes in the end. Furthermore, he did not give Long Yakong, Helian Wuxia, and the others a chance. 34 swords seemed to have easily defeated the 8th rank sect. However, after defeating them, Chen Hao sat down cross-legged and entered a state of cultivation. Before the next round, Chen Hao's freakish recovery ability would allow him to return to his peak state. Long Yakong was very depressed. Up until now, he was the only one from the star-picking sect who hadn't made a move yet. Before coming here, the originally arrogant him had already lowered his head and deliberately put in a few good words with Chen Hao and Helian Wuxia. If it wasn't a sect that was too strong, he asked the 2 of them to go easy on him and give him a chance to drink some soup. After all, in the front, there was Chen Hao, this freak, and in the back, there was Helian Wuxia, this tiger that stood in his way. He was stuck in the middle and didn't have a chance to perform. This was a very depressing thing. However, Chen Hao still did not give him a chance. However, when Chen Hao began to cultivate and recover, he sent a message to Long Yakong, Helian Wuxia, and the others from the Zhaixing sect. Helian Wuxia and the others widened their eyes as if they were dumbfounded. However, everyone, including Long Yakong, had their eyes glittering brightly. Their blood and battle intent were burning fiercely as they locked their gazes in the direction of the Heavenly Sword sect, as if they were on the verge of exploding at any second. No one expected Chen Hao to have such a bold ambition. And it was this ambition that made the Zhaixing sect boil with excitement. When the names of the Zhaixing sect and the Sky Sword sect were called out by the referee, the disciple who was ranked 10th in the Zhaixing sect immediately let out a long howl. It was like a wolf's howl, filled with endless fighting spirit and madness, and rushed into the arena. This caused the crowd, which was already buzzing with discussion due to the clash between the 2 great powers, to widen their eyes. Was this disciple of the star-picking sect crazy? Yes, he was crazy. Even though his cultivation wasn't high, the essence, energy, and spirit of his entire body was like a ball of blazing flames that was filled with lofty sentiments. His expression and posture seemed as if he was about to do something great that would make everyone bow down in admiration and worship. He'd forgotten life and death, forgotten everything, and only fought. This disciple's talent was ordinary. At the peak of the middle nascent soul realm, he barely managed to pass the test. He didn't have the strength of a super genius that leapfrogged above him. He had relied on his own cultivation to meet the requirements. However, such a mediocre disciple had actually defeated 3 Heavenly Sword sect disciples who were at the peak of the early nascent soul stage. Not only that, but they all possessed even stronger attacks than him. Even though he was clearly on the verge of death, he still refused to admit defeat and challenged a 4th opponent. It was as if a small universe had exploded. Although he had lost to the 4th opponent, he had still managed to reduce the 4th opponent's combat prowess. The first one was so crazy, the second one was so crazy, and so was the 5th one. The 5 weakest disciples of the star-picking sect had actually won against 23 Heavenly Sword sect disciples in front of everyone's eyes. When each of them returned, they had all been severely injured and exhausted of their energy. However, their eyes were still filled with fanaticism, as if they were possessed as they stared fixedly at the arena. What kind of concept was it to win against the godlike Heavenly Sword sect? Regardless of whether they succeeded or not, this was the craziest thing they had ever done in their lives. Tantai Lien entered the arena. She was dressed in a long pink dress that accentuated her graceful figure. Her beautiful face was like a lotus flower that had emerged from the mud. She had already reached the peak of the middle nascent soul stage, and the aura she exuded was more terrifying than any of her previous opponents. The battle hadn't even begun, but under the terrifying battle intent, the glow of flames was already faintly rising from her body. However, her entire state of mind was as heavy as a mountain. What she needed to do was to defeat as many opponents as possible. In the first 2 days of the competition, Tantai Lien had already displayed a power that was completely beyond her level, especially when she released the power of the Phoenix inheritance. Even a half-step incarnation could only lose once in front of her. This time, against the high and mighty 9th-rank sect of the cultivation world, and the Heavenly Sword sect that had nearly 20 times more people than them. How many could Tantai Lien win? Although there was no result yet, everyone in the martial arts arena already knew from the momentum of the 5 people in front of the star-picking sect that this time, the star-picking sect, which only had 10 people, would definitely create a more terrifying result than the Myriad Pill Pavilion. Because of Tantai Lien, because of Helian Wuxia, and because of Long Yukong, who hadn't had a chance to fight from the beginning to the end. No one knew what Long Yukong was like, but Helian Wuxia was more terrifying than Tantai Lien. No one doubted this. 3 monstrous geniuses appeared at the same time in the small star-picking sect. They were destined to be stronger than Lung Yihan, who only had 1 monstrous genius, right? There was no fighting, and the first move was the ultimate move. Of course, the so-called ultimate move wasn't a desperate move that consumed a lot of energy. It was a move that could ensure that the opponent would be defeated in a few moves, and would consume the least energy. Amidst everyone's shock, Tantai Lien completed the first 10 kills. Using the 7-star secret technique, she defeated 10 Heavenly Sword sect disciples in a row. At this time, Tantai Lien's energy was almost exhausted. But everyone knew that Tantai Lien's victory would continue because she hadn't released the power of the Phoenix's Nirvana. Phoenix Heavenly Fire, Level 6, the Realm of Great Success. When Tantai Lien released her blazing flames time and time again, defeating her opponents in a miserable manner, the entire martial arts practice field was shocked. No one expected that Tantai Lien had been hiding the power of the Phoenix's Nirvana all this time. In fact, she had indeed been hiding it. When she stepped into the mid-stage of the nascent soul realm, she had already integrated the 6th level of the Phoenix's inheritance, and truly stepped into the realm of great success. Unfortunately, even if Tantai Lien controlled the Nirvana Heavenly Fire, she couldn't hold on for long. After defeating the 7th, which was a total of 17, Tantai Lien no longer had any energy left. 6 people defeated 40 people. Amazing, really amazing. This Tantai Lien's ability is probably not even a half-step to the Incarnation Realm Master, right? The power of the Phoenix Heavenly Fire is really too strong. Definitely not a match. The 6th level of the Heavenly Fire is the Realm of Great Success. It's much more terrifying than the Realm of Great Success. Moreover, this is the most terrifying flame in the world. It's enough to burn everything in the world. She's only at the peak of the mid-stage of the nascent soul realm now, but she's integrated to such a high realm. If she ascends to the Incarnation Realm, what will it be like? Just wait and see. There's still Helian Wuxia. No matter what, even if Chun Hao is slightly weaker than Lung Yihan, the star-picking sect's results won't be worse than the Myriad Pill Pavilion. The sect master of the Sky Sword sect, Wu Ruochen, and the others all looked extremely embarrassed. Especially the sect master of the Sky Sword sect. Compared to the sect master of the Faint Mist sect, he was no different. His old face was burning hot. Although out of the 193 disciples of the Sky Sword sect, the 40 that were eliminated were the weakest, and their cultivation levels were not high. The disparity was too great. Moreover, Helian Wuxia, who was stronger than Tantai Lien, had yet to appear. From Helian Wuxi's performance yesterday, it was likely that more people were eliminated. Originally, when he saw that the Faint Mist sect only had 10 people left after being defeated by Lung Yihan, he still despised them in his heart. But now he was almost certain that the Sky Sword sect wasn't any better. Yi Feishue, who was at the peak of the late-stage nascent soul realm, was defeated after defeating 4 late-stage nascent soul realm cultivators. Although she couldn't compare to Tantai Lian, this result was still shocking for the star-picking sect. Then Helian Wuxi finally appeared. She was wearing a white dress with long sleeves. Her cold, beautiful face exuded an icy aura. She was like a goddess of the moon, attracting the attention of everyone in the martial arts practice field. Clang. The moonlight sword was only a low-grade spirit weapon. The moment it was unsheathed, the sky and earth darkened. Even the light of the scorching sun was covered. Gusts of cold wind swept through the entire ring. Helian Wuxi could totally choose a high-grade spirit weapon, but she didn't. The moonlight sword was a gift that Chen Hao gave her before she stepped into the cultivation world. Moreover, she really liked the aura of the moonlight sword. She wasn't a sword maniac, but she had a sword maniac like Mo Yui. This Helian Wuxi's moves and styles all contain an extremely profound aura. Even this old man is unable to see through it. I really don't know what kind of great opportunity she obtained. Her future achievements won't be inferior to Yu Yu's. The Ling Tian sect's sect leader's mind sensed the battle in the ring and thought to himself. As a leading figure in the Eastern Mainland's 9th grade sect, how sharp was his vision? However, it wasn't just him. Even the sect leaders of all the sects present couldn't see through the mystery of Helian Wuxi's body. This kind of mystery couldn't be felt at all when Helian Wuxi wasn't in a battle state. It would only appear during a battle. And it was very, very weak. However, it was such a weak aura that allowed Helian Wuxi's combat strength to increase by a lot. Especially in terms of recovery ability, it was even more terrifying. From the beginning to the end, Helian Wuxi didn't use any powerful killer moves. She adopted a completely different strategy from Tantai Lian. Firstly, Helian Wuxi's own realm was stronger than the opponent she was currently facing. Secondly, under the circumstances where Helian Wuxi didn't consume much energy, she had an astonishing recovery speed. In this aspect, even Chen Hao couldn't compare. Therefore, she naturally wouldn't waste her energy. Round moons bloomed in the ring. Helian Wuxi was like a goddess dancing under the cold moonlight. She was neither hot nor cold, but she made her opponents fall in the ring one by one. Her beautiful little face and graceful figure made the young disciples widen their eyes and forget to breathe. In the entire martial arts practice field, other than the 9-sided ring, all the spectators stared blankly at Helian Wuxi in the ring. They silently counted the number of disciples who fell in the ring. First update. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 325. The number of people increased one by one. Everyone's eyes opened wider and wider. 20, 30, 40 at this moment. Even Chen Hao's eyes widened in shock. His black, deep eyes shone with a bright light as he stared at Helian Wuxi, who was blooming with light and resplendent on the arena. Even he didn't expect Helian Wuxi to be able to do this. And the number was still increasing. Her absolutely beautiful figure was like a dancing fairy. That originally extremely weak profound aura seemed to have strengthened by a sliver as Helian Wuxi put all of her heart and soul into the battle. But it was this little bit that made Helian Wuxi's recovery ability even more terrifying. She had no distractions, only a trace of obsession. She began to witness the miracles that happened to Chen Hao in the secular world. No one trusted Chen Hao more than she did. So when Chen Hao said that he wanted everyone to work hard and take down the Sky Sword sect together, she believed more than anyone else that Chen Hao wasn't simply encouraging everyone to achieve the best results. He really wanted to take it down. A small 3rd grade sect with only 10 people had taken down a 9th grade sect with 193 genius disciples, a 9th grade sect that stood at the pinnacle of the cultivation world. This was crazy. Then she would be crazy with him. She was pure and determined. That was to do her best to block the enemies for Chen Hao. She could block the enemies. Cough cough. When Helian Wuxi won 68 matches in a row and eliminated the 108th disciple of the Sky Sword sect, Lung Yihan couldn't help but cough. She's an expert at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. She wouldn't want to solve all the obstacles for you, would she? At this moment, there were still 85 people in the Sky Sword sect, and the lowest cultivation was at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. When Lung Yihan asked, Xiao Yiyu's beautiful eyes also flashed with disbelief as she looked at Chen Hao. If possible, of course she wants to. She's almost at her limit. Below the late nascent soul stage, she can use her advantage in cultivation and strength to defeat them one by one. However, it's not so easy to reach the peak of the late nascent soul stage. Chen Hao said thoughtfully. Sure enough, after a peak late nascent soul stage expert from the Heaven's Sword sect stepped onto the stage, Helian Wuxia, who had been winning by relying on her unhurried attacks that consumed the least amount of energy, finally displayed the only consummate skill she had cultivated, the Heaven-tier consummate skill, Cloud-cleaving sword art. Just like when Tantai Lian released her Nirvana heavenly fire at the end, Helian Wuxia's cloud-splitting sword art, which contained the mysteries of reincarnation, displayed an even more terrifying power. One after another, peak late nascent soul stage experts fell under her sword. If Helian Wuxia's previous performance had shocked people apart from her monstrous recovery ability, then at this moment, what shocked people was her valiant and terrifying battle prowess. The Moonlight Sword brought out the power of the cloud-cleaving sword technique to the extreme. Every sword strike carried the impermanence of the clouds and the unpredictability of the mysteries. When the sword broke through the clouds, it was like a full moon piercing through the layers of dark clouds, leaving the opponent with nowhere to hide. 18. Helian Wuxia tried her best. Her last sword strike consumed all her energy, and defeated the 18th peak late nascent soul stage expert. To be exact, it was a draw. When Chen Hao directly stepped onto the stage and carried the seriously injured Helian Wuxia back, the entire martial arts practice field emitted a monstrous buzzing sound. No less than the fluctuation caused by Lung Yihan just now. Helian Wuxia, who was only at the peak late nascent soul stage, had won 86 rounds in a row. 18 of her opponents were all at the peak late nascent soul stage. What kind of concept was this? She couldn't be compared with Lung Yihan, but that was because Helian Wuxia's realm was not as high as Lung Yihan's. If she could advance to the incarnation stage, perhaps even Lung Yihan would be inferior to Helian Wuxia. Moreover, this was a stunning young girl. In the martial arts practice field, shocked cultivators. No one doubted that after this year's intersect competition, Helian Wuxia, Lung Yihan, Chen Hao, and the relatively weaker Tantai Lian would all be famous in the entire eastern continent. They were monstrous geniuses, geniuses that only appeared once in 1,000 years. They were geniuses that couldn't be measured by ordinary thinking at all. The background of the sect, the conditions, they were all fleeting clouds. Such monstrous geniuses, even if they were just itinerant cultivators, were bound to bloom the brightest light. Boom. With a loud sound, everyone's gaze returned to the arena. Long Yukong, who was half a step to the incarnation stage, who had been suppressed for more than 2 days, was like a raging dragon coming out of the abyss under Chen Hao's ambition. The performance of the star-picking sect disciples, and especially the amazing performance of Tantai Lian and Helian Wuxia. He defeated a peak late nascent soul stage expert of the Sky Sword sect in one move. Yes, it was one move. Long Yukong was very clear that he didn't have the monstrous talent of Helian Wuxia and Tantai Lian. He could only rely on his strongest attack, and the most thunderous means to defeat as many opponents as possible. That was all. Perhaps it was the eruption after being suppressed for too long that made Long Yukong burst out like a small universe, burning and venting, and exerting 150% of his combat strength. He clearly felt that his essence, energy, and spirit had never reached such a state of excitement, fullness, and smoothness. After defeating the fifth master at the peak of the late nascent soul stage, he faintly felt that after this battle, he would truly enter the peak of the half-step incarnation stage. It meant that he would be able to trigger divine punishment and enter the incarnation stage. When the 10th opponent was defeated by him, Long Yukong had also exhausted his energy. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were shining with excitement. He was brought down from the arena by Yi Feishue. He had no regrets in this battle. The star-picking sect, a third-rank sect, eliminated 136 people from the Sky Sword sect, a 9th-rank sect, with 9 people. The Sky Sword sect only had 57 people left. Among them, 42 were at the peak late nascent soul stage, 13 were at the peak of the incarnation stage, 1 was at the early stage of the incarnation stage, and 1 was at the peak of the middle stage of the incarnation stage. Of course, the one at the peak of the middle stage of the incarnation stage was Wu Ruochen. Phew. The star-picking sect is too powerful. It's Chen Hao's turn. Do you think Chen Hao will meet Wu Ruochen? It should be difficult. Although there are only 57 people left, they are all above the peak late nascent soul stage. There are also 13 peak late incarnation stage experts and 1 early incarnation stage expert. If he wants to meet Wu Ruochen, he will have to be 30% stronger than Leng Yihan. Otherwise, it's impossible. That's true. Let's see. We can't measure these monsters. It's hard to say until the last moment. What's hard to say? Let alone Wu Ruochen. Even if Meng Lang and Chen Hao defeat all the peak late nascent soul stage experts and peak late incarnation stage experts, they won't be able to continue the competition. The 2 people in the 6th group must be Wu Ruochen, Meng Lang and Chen Hao. How can Chen Hao fight Meng Lang and Wu Ruochen when he is not in his peak state? Therefore, even if Chen Hao is stronger than Leng Yihan, he will stop at the peak of incarnation stage. Amidst the buzzing sounds of discussion of the crowd, Chen Hao flashed up onto the arena, and his extraordinarily handsome and angular face flickered with a wisp of coldness that had never appeared and arrogance that came from his bones. Then, when the referee put down his hand, with a hiss, Chen Hao, who had always defeated his opponents with a single sword strike, had actually strangely transformed into a gust of wind this time, and completely disappeared from everyone's line of sight. At this moment, everyone had an illusion. Could it be Leng Yihan? He can't be thinking of eliminating the Sky Sword sect, right? Seeing Chen Hao use the Heart Sutra of merging with heaven and earth, Leng Yihan's heart skipped a beat. His eyes widened and he could not help but murmur. Eliminate the Sky Sword sect? Xia Yuyu turned to look at Leng Yihan in surprise. I should have thought of it. Leng Yihan glanced at Xia Yuyu and continued. Only he would dare to make such an unbelievable decision. Otherwise, the people of the Zhaixing sect would not be so crazy. What a pervert. Unreasonable. Crazy. How he really wants to eliminate the Sky Sword sect? Xia Yuyu asked again in disbelief. Of course. If not, why would he change his attack method? Just watch. Can he do it? I don't know. You ask me, but who should I ask? Leng Yihan said, and ignored Xia Yuyu. Xia Yuyu frowned slightly, and did not ask anymore. She was even more certain that Leng Yihan was not normal. Although Xia Yuyu was simple, she was extremely intelligent. With her appearance, talent and strength, who would disdain to talk to her if she was a normal youth? This was not Xia Yuyu's conceit, but the truth. Ah. Boom. In just an instant, a scream of terror, accompanied by a terrifying explosion of energy, exploded from the arena. It can't be right? Everyone's eyeballs almost fell to the ground when they saw the scene in front of them. Xia Yuyu, Helian Wuzi, Tantai Lian, and everyone from the star-picking sect, as well as those who were friends with Chen Hao, felt their hearts skip a beat. Even Leng Yihan, who understood Chen Hao's strength the most, was shocked. He almost jumped up. Crazy. Leng Yihan was speechless and extremely shocked. His opponent had been defeated. He did not even feel the slightest bit of energy fluctuation before he felt a chill in his chest. A treasure sword had pierced through his heart when it was just a few milliseconds away. This feeling of impending death caused him to instantly circulate all the true essence in his body and blast it behind him. The result was that Chen Hao, who had strangely appeared behind him, was sent flying. Everyone's shock and astonishment came from this. They were shocked at what method Chen Hao had used to pierce through his opponent without emitting the slightest bit of energy. They were shocked at how Chen Hao, who had done this, seemed to be completely unprepared. Similarly, there were no energy fluctuations, and he was sent flying by his opponent's critical strike. Only Leng Yihan knew that Chen Hao had not only used heaven and earth to hide his tracks, he had also taken the risk of using a carving technique that required him to restrain all energy to pierce his opponent. Without a doubt, Chen Hao's energy consumption would be close to zero, but he would have to face his opponent's critical strike. Lung Yihan would not dare to use this technique no matter what. But Chen Hao had used it. Chen Hao, who had rolled to his feet, stood up as if nothing had happened. He had used pure physical strength to block his opponent's strike. The consumption was close to zero. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Come to vote for me. Your support is my biggest motivation. Chapter 326. Impossible, impossible. I'll go all out for you. After the Sky Sword Sect cultivator sealed his bleeding chest with his Zhen Yuan, he stared in shock at Chen Hao, who had taken his attack head-on. His Zhen Yuan surged as he rushed towards Chen Hao again. Next. There was no need for Chen Hao to speak. The referee's dignified voice sounded and he waved his hand, sending the disciple out of the stage. Chen Hao's strange attack was without a doubt. If there were no restrictions in the rules of the competition, that guy would have already kicked the bucket. How could he still jump around? However, it was precisely because Chen Hao's attack didn't contain any energy and only pierced through his heart that this situation occurred. But the referee's eyes were bright. While everyone was still immersed in Chen Hao's strange, terrifying, and completely unexpected attack and his freakishly formidable physical resistance, the battle had begun once more. Chen Hao turned into a gust of wind again. Boom, boom, boom. After the second peak late-stage nascent soul stage disciple came up, he directly released his majestic true essence and condensed it into layers of protective qi around his body. He knew that this consumed a lot of energy, but there was no other way. Lung Yihan's previous battle had already made everyone understand that this was the best way to deal with such a terrifying concealment ability. Moreover, this disciple knew that he was no match for Chen Hao. It was just a matter of how many moves he could last, and how much energy Chen Hao had to consume. For a full half a minute, Chen Hao didn't make a move, nor did he release any aura. On the other hand, the disciple was extremely nervous. His face was dripping with cold sweat. Although he knew that his life wasn't in danger, he didn't want to be pierced through by a sword. Moreover, if Chen Hao's hand was careless, wouldn't he be finished? Of course, this kind of situation was absolutely impossible. Chen Hao didn't dare and wouldn't do it. Perhaps only this guy who was in the situation and scared out of his wits would think so. 1 minute went by, 2 minutes went by, and then 3 minutes went by. However, Chen Hao still did not make a move. Not only did this make the opponent more and more nervous, but it also made everyone who was paying attention to this match feel suffocated. Could it be that this fellow wants to grind his opponent to death? This thought rose in everyone's mind. However, he was very puzzled. Could it be that Chen Hao's concealment technique did not consume energy? Even if it didn't consume any energy, what was the point of dawdling like this? It was nothing more than saving a bit of energy. Other than the disciples of the star-picking sect, Lung Yihan and Xia Yuyu, no one knew what Chen Hao was up to. With his strength, he could easily defeat his opponent with a single strike. However, Chen Hao did not do so. Lung Yihan, how blends into the world. It's the same concealment technique as you. Doesn't it consume energy? After a full 5 minutes, the disciple's face was covered in cold sweat, but Chen Hao still hadn't appeared. Xia Yu couldn't help but ask Lung Yihan again. She directly said blends into the world, to tell Lung Yihan that she already knew about this concealment technique from Chen Hao. No need. Lung Yihan frowned slightly and said. Clearly, Xia Yuyu's words made him realize that the relationship between Chen Hao and Xia Yuyu had reached a certain level. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said blends into the world. What a madman. If he really continues like this, I'm afraid that when the half-step incarnation disciple attacks, he won't even consume any energy. Pooh! At the 6th minute, when everyone felt that they couldn't bear this oppressive and suffocating feeling, Chen Hao's sword light, which was like a poisonous snake's tongue, suddenly appeared. Without any suspense, the sword pierced through the heart. And this disciple was even worse. He didn't even have time to attack before Chen Hao's figure disappeared behind him. It was obvious that Chen Hao had caught the moment when his opponent paused under high tension. No. I can't continue like this. Otherwise, even if I don't consume any true qi, I'll consume a lot of energy. The gains won't make up for the losses. After defeating 2 people, Chen Hao thought to himself. Blends into the world, coupled with his powerful physical body, could indeed allow him to easily defeat an expert at the peak of the late nascent soul stage, but his mind also had to be constantly operating. Even if one person only needed a few minutes, it would still take several hours to finish the battle. Obviously, this couldn't go on. As long as I can maintain the speed of true qi consumption and recovery, I just need to do this. In a moment, Chen Hao made his decision. The third, the fourth, originally, they thought that Chen Hao would continue to use this strange method that consumed very little energy, but which made everyone feel rather bored. But on the third round, although Chen Hao had blended into the world, he used his incomparably sharp sword light to directly break through his opponent's layers of protective aura and defeated him in one move. After 5 consecutive rounds, Chen Hao once again showed signs of wasting time. Moreover, as the competition progressed, everyone found that Chen Hao's fighting style seemed to have entered a cycle of 2 methods. One was violent and fierce, the other was extremely strange. As the number of people decreased one by one, the faces of all the disciples of the Sky Sword sect became extremely ugly, or rather terrified. On the rostrum, the Heavenly Sword sect's sect master's face was filled with boundless shame and anger, especially when he saw the gazes that everyone was shooting at him from time to time. He wanted nothing more than to find a hole to crawl into. This was too fucking embarrassing. A dignified 9th rank sect had nearly 200 disciples, but now all of them were at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. Every one of them looked like they were scared out of their wits before the battle even began. As the Sky Sword sect master, how could he endure this? On the other hand, Yuan Tyron's old face was in high spirits, as if it had been filled with chicken blood, blooming with red light. In the contestant area, the veins on Wu Ruochen's face were bulging. His somewhat handsome face was almost distorted at this time. The gaze he looked at Chen Hao with was filled with monstrous anger and disdain. Yes, it was disdain. Although this kind of concealment technique was powerful and had surprised him, it was not enough to attract his attention. He believed that in the face of absolute power, any concealment was futile, especially in the limited area of the arena. He had absolute confidence that he could make Chen Hao unable to hide in an instant. At this moment, he hoped that Chen Hao could defeat all the people of the Sky Sword sect and meet him. The raging flames of war began to rise in his heart, causing the people sitting beside him to look sideways. 42 peak of the late nascent soul stage, and they were getting stronger and stronger. Most of them were at the peak of the late nascent soul stage, but they were all defeated by the terrifying Chen Hao. I've reached the half-step incarnation stage, Chen Hao said in his heart with a cold expression. Chen Hao was very clear that the half-step incarnation stage experts, and the super geniuses of the Sky Sword sect, had an attack power that was definitely beyond their level. If Chen Hao wanted to rely on his physical body to resist, he would definitely not be able to remain unscathed. This was the real beginning of the battle. He had to rely on his true strength to end his opponent. Phew! Chen Hao let out a long breath. When the first half-step incarnation stage expert appeared on the arena, he did not conceal his presence. Dense and surging true essence surged out without the slightest restraint at this moment. His long robe fluttered, his long hair fluttered, and his peerlessly handsome and angular face and pitch-black and deep eyes were like the most dazzling stars in the night sky. They were also like 2 peerlessly fierce treasured swords that naturally emitted a piercingly cold and arrogant aura that looked down upon the world. This was definitely not the kind of arrogance that made people feel like they were asking for a beating, but a kind of true arrogance. Arrogance in his bones, blood, and heart. At this moment, in the entire arena, countless female disciples and female spectators were staring blankly at Chen Hao. It was hard for their hearts not to flutter. What did it mean to be handsome? What was arrogant? What was dominating the world? This was called. This was a kind of feeling that rose naturally from the depths of one's heart. A feeling that came from the inside out. It was not the kind of feeling that Chu Qingtian had, which relied on aura and pressure to make people feel from the outside in. Helian Wuxi and Tantai Lian's small faces shone with a touch of brilliance and pride. Yes, pride that rose because of Chen Hao. Xia Yuyu's eyes were wide open as she looked at Chen Hao, who was standing proudly on the arena. Her heart was surging with even more excitement and intense joy than Helian Wuxi and Tantai Lian's. It had to be said that even though Xia Yuyu had been with Chen Hao for a year and a half, and because of the 9 revolutions heavenly young earthine art, the two of them had reached a state of telepathy. The one she had interacted with was the most real and simple Chen Hao. She could feel the arrogance in Chen Hao's heart, and could understand Chen Hao's character. However, she had never seen how the arrogance hidden in the depths of Chen Hao's bones blossomed. To put it bluntly, she had too little experience with Chen Hao. Hao is so handsome, so handsome. Xia Yuyu, the #1 genius of the Eastern continent and a goddess in the hearts of countless young disciples, couldn't help but murmur like a little love-struck fool. Although her voice was very soft and everyone was paying attention to the arena, it was still heard by many observant people. Not far away, Chu Qingtian clenched his fists tightly. His terrifying eyes flashed with a trace of coldness and haze. As for Lung Yihan, who was close to Xia Yuyu, he curled his lips. However, his gaze didn't move away from Chen Hao's body. He lightly bit his thin lips. No one knew what he was thinking, but he didn't realize that at this moment, his expression was so feminine. Brat, come. I want to see how you're going to hide. Even if I lose, I'll let you know that our Sky Sword sect isn't something that a clown like you can contend against. Who's the clown? You'll understand very soon. Chen Hao slowly raised his sword and said indifferently. In an instant, his aura had turned into a tranquil little lake. A cool breeze blew, causing ripples to form on the surface of the lake, spreading out in all directions. Third update. Today is the 3rd update. Thank you to the 2 monthly votes and the brother who tipped me. Dark Mountain sat from 6 in the morning until now. The reward is not an egg. Thank you very much. Chapter 327. When Chen Hao's opponent directly used his ultimate move to bombard Chen Hao with sword lights that contained terrifying power, Chen Hao suddenly became like a fish in a small lake. His figure was agile and unpredictable, and he easily weaved through the terrifying sword lights and advanced towards his opponent at a snaking but high speed. Free wave treading steps. Just this mysterious and magical footwork alone had already surprised everyone. What was even more surprising was that Chen Hao's body did not have the slightest bit of Zhen Yuan leaking out except for the aura of perfection like water. It was as if all the Zhen Yuan's circulation was under his control, forming a world of its own, circulating endlessly. Only his increasingly plentiful and round spirit made everyone clearly feel a dangerous aura. The disciple who bore the brunt of Chen Hao's strange and terrifying approach was shocked in his heart, but at the same time, he also understood Chen Hao's intention. Close combat. He had already seen Chen Hao's terrifying sword, so how could he dare to tangle with Chen Hao? Without any hesitation, he crazily condensed the Zhen Yuan around his body. He did not expect to defeat Chen Hao, but only hoped to injure Chen Hao a little. Seeing that Chen Hao was approaching his best attack range, he roared and used his strongest ultimate move. Qi. More than 100 sword lights condensed from his life's cultivation, suddenly descended like a plague of locusts, densely meeting Chen Hao. The time, distance, and angle were grasped perfectly. Even if everyone knew that they could not really do anything to Chen Hao, they still could not help but secretly praise in their hearts. The half-step incarnation of a 9th-grade sect is indeed incomparable to an ordinary sect. I'm afraid that this move will injure Chen Hao a little. Seeing that Chen Hao could not avoid it, many people secretly said in their hearts. However, right at this moment, the 5-element sword in Chen Hao's hand suddenly emitted a dazzling white light that directly drowned out the entire stage. Soon after, a ding-ding-ding sound of dense and terrifying sword light clashing resounded within the crowd. When everyone's vision recovered, the disciple of the Heavenly Sword sect had already been sent flying with a spurt of blood spurting from his chest. Light attribute true essence. He actually comprehended the true essence of the light attribute. Seeing this scene, many people sucked in a breath of cold air. The true essence of light and darkness was one of the most difficult attributes to comprehend out of the 5 elements. Truth was not energy. After reaching the Golden Core realm, all cultivators would more or less be able to control the 5 elements and the energy derived from them. However, they could only control energy. There were very few who could comprehend the truth, especially the truth of light, darkness and lightning. The true essence of the light element has concealed his figure. Under the mysterious footwork, the opponent is unable to lock onto his aura. This means that even if the opponent's ultimate move is under complete control, it will lose its target. How many trump cards does this kid have? I'm really a waste of my position as the sect master. Yuan Tyran stared at the unscathed Chen Hao in the arena and said excitedly and a little gloomily. It had to be said that from the moment Chen Hao stepped into the sect until now, although Yuan Tyran had already decided to train him with all his might, it seemed that the star-picking sect had really not given anything. As for him as the sect leader, his understanding of Chen Hao was even more limited. The second, the third, the fourth, one by one, the half-step incarnation experts became stronger and stronger. However, without exception, they were all eliminated by Chen Hao. When it came to the 11th person, what surprised everyone was that Chen Hao actually began to use his powerful concealment technique again, as if he was stalling for time. It took him a full 20 minutes to eliminate the 11th person. Then the 12th and 13th person were still concealment techniques, and the time taken was even longer. When the last half-step incarnation realm disciple was eliminated, only Wu Ruochen and Meng Lang were left of the Heavenly Sword sect of nearly 200 people. At this moment, everyone's eyes were on Chen Hao. Even the referee was no exception. They were both shocked and doubtful. Would he continue to fight? Chen Hao didn't need to answer. His gaze that was as sharp as a sword, his aura that was chilly, and his battle intent that soared into the sky was the best answer. Next. The referee took a deep breath, and his loud voice suddenly resounded throughout the entire martial arts practice field. At this moment, if there were still people who did not know what Chen Hao was going to do, then they were really pigs. However, it was precisely because they knew that everyone's gazes towards Chen Hao were filled with incomparable shock and disbelief. In a group competition between sects, and in a situation where the weak would go from strength to strength, what kind of concept was it to challenge an incarnation realm expert? In particular, when they thought of the madness of the star-picking sect disciples, and the way Chen Hao fought until now, they were all even more shocked. Without a doubt, before the battle with the Heavenly Sword sect, the star-picking sect had already made this decision. Or it could be said that Chen Hao had made this decision. The decision to challenge the Heavenly Sword sect. Hiss! The sound of people sucking in cold air resounded in every corner of the martial arts practice field. No one could describe how shocked they were at this moment. The star-picking sect, a third-grade sect with only 10 people, wanted to challenge the high and mighty 9th-grade sect with nearly 200 people. What kind of concept was this? Could he succeed? This was the question that appeared in everyone's mind. Apart from a few people, the answer was almost unanimous. Even if Chen Hao could defeat Meng Lang, who was at the early stage of the incarnation realm, he would not be able to shake Wu Ruochen, who was at the peak of the middle stage of the incarnation realm. But regardless of whether Chen Hao succeeded or not, he would be the most dazzling existence in this competition. He used his combat strength, talent, potential, and courage that surpassed his cultivation level by 10 times or even 100 times to conquer everyone. He was challenging the legend. He was challenging all the low-level sects, including the 8th-grade sections. For hundreds of years, no sect or person had been able to accomplish this feat, who could shake the high and mighty 9th-grade sect. The second expert of the Heavenly Sword sect, Meng Lang, took a deep breath. His eyes flashed with a touch of coldness, and even his body trembled slightly. This trembling was very complicated. It contained the excitement of not having a chance to fight for a few days, but also contained the fear of Chen Hao, and a little bit of frustration. Whether he won or lost, he was a little unhappy. Even if he won, he would not be able to defeat Chen Hao, who was not in peak condition. How could he not be frustrated? Anyone could say that Chen Hao was defeated in an exhausted state after defeating dozens of people. If he lost, there was no need to talk about it. But at this point he could only fight, because this was a matter of the highest honor of the Heavenly Sword sect. If Chen Hao really took down the Heavenly Sword sect, it would undoubtedly be the greatest shame of the Heavenly Sword sect. Whoosh! Meng Lang stepped onto the arena under the gaze of tens of thousands of people. As the second genius of the Heavenly Sword sect, he cut off all negative emotions the moment he stepped onto the arena. You are very courageous and very strong. But you dare to challenge the dignity of the Heavenly Sword sect with just this point? You are overestimating yourself. Humph, your victory will end here. I, Ming Lang, will let you understand what is called the absolute gap in strength. Not to mention the current you. Even if you are in peak condition, you will still be unable to withstand a single blow from me, Ming Lang. Clang. Boom. As soon as Ming Lang's cold voice fell, he took the lead to unsheath his sword. At the same time, the vigorous true origin and terrifying pressure that symbolized the early stage of the incarnation realm were completely released at this moment. Although the half-step incarnation realm and the incarnation realm were only one step apart, the difference was like heaven and earth. Everyone knew this point, especially after Meng Lang completely released his aura, which made everyone understand Meng Lang's strength. Coupled with his tall and mighty figure, he was like an unshakable war god in front of Chen Hao. The terrifying pressure caused the entire arena to set off gusts of wind. Everyone felt Meng Lang's terrifying aura and looked at Chen Hao. The entire martial arts practice field was silent. Even the disciples who were fighting in the other 9 arenas could not help but look over. Kaba Kaba. Suddenly, Chen Hao, whose expression was as solemn as a mountain, trembled slightly under the raging wind caused by the aura. His entire body actually emitted the crisp sound of bones colliding. This sound was very soft, but it carried a huge penetrating force that clearly entered everyone's ears. Along with the sound of this sound, the blood, tendons, and bones in Chen Hao's body instantly condensed into one. The essence, energy, and spirit in his body bloomed with a bang, like a pillar of light that shot straight into the sky. There was still no fluctuation of true origin leaking out, but it completely blocked Meng Lang's terrifying aura within a radius of 30 meters around him. Chen Hao did not speak, but slowly raised his sword and pointed at Meng Lang. There was not even the slightest fluctuation of emotion on his handsome and cold face. Bang! Hiss! At this moment, the instant the referee put down his hand, Meng Lang suddenly stomped his feet, and a dull rumble erupted. 2 deep pits suddenly appeared on the incomparably hard ground under his feet, and Meng Lang's entire body was like an arrow that had left the bow. What was even more shocking was that Meng Lang's figure seemed to have completely disappeared from everyone's sight. His entire body and the sword in his hand condensed into a 30-meter-long golden sword. One with the sword. It was not an ordinary one with the sword, but a one with the sword that only an expert of the incarnation realm could perform. The person had transformed into a sword, and the essence, energy, spirit, and true origin had completely condensed into one with the sword. It was obvious that Meng Lang had raised his strength to the limit when he attacked. He wanted to directly suppress Chen Hao in the most violent manner. So strong. An expert of the incarnation realm is indeed not something that a half-step incarnation realm expert can compare to. This Meng Lang is an existence second only to Wu Ruochen in the Sky Sword sect. The one with the sword at the incarnation realm is like an extension of his arm, and the combat strength he possesses is absolutely terrifying. It seems that Meng Lang does not want to give Chen Hao any chance to perform. Can Chen Hao block it? At this moment, countless cultivators' minds were filled with amazement and anticipation. Everyone held their breaths and locked onto Chen Hao's figure. Good timing. As he stared at the terrifying sword light that was swiftly approaching him and completely enveloping him, Chen Hao's pupils suddenly constricted, and he let out a clear shout. Rumble. The aura around his body was finally released for the first time, and it was released without the slightest restraint. Rolling true origin gushed out, and the terrifying aura instantly swept out and rushed toward Meng Lang, who was coming at him. Chen Hao originally wanted to end the battle quickly with Meng Lang. If he really wanted to fight, Meng Lang was not a half-step to the incarnation realm. It was absolutely impossible for him to rely on concealment to recover his true origin. Meng Lang directly pushed himself to the limit without any probing, which was exactly what Chen Hao wanted. First update. Chapter 328. Rumble. The figures of the two had yet to meet, but under the terrifying aura of the two, the entire arena rumbled like thunder, and the momentum was extremely shocking. Clang, 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 boom, boom, boom. The dense and terrifying sound of metal clashing, accompanied by terrifying explosions, caused a storm. In an instant, the powerful barrier of the arena seemed to be torn apart, and the two figures quickly crossed each other. That's all you got. Today, I'll make you understand that in front of my incarnation realm strength, your nascent soul realm strength is nothing. Meng Lang stood in the air. The instant confrontation made him clearly feel that although Chen Hao's strength was strong, it was much weaker than his. And this was under the condition that he did not use his ultimate move. Although he knew that Chen Hao must have an ultimate move, how could a small star-picking sect be stronger than his Sky Sword sect's ultimate move? Is that so? The incarnation realm is only SOSO. Don't say that I didn't give you a chance. Come out with your ultimate move. I don't want to waste my strength on you. Chen Hao finally spoke. He was even more arrogant than Meng Lang. His cold expression and words seemed to be telling everyone, "You're nothing but a clown. My goal is to topple your heavenly sword sect. My final opponent is Wu Ruochen, so don't try to jump around. You're courting death." Meng Lang snorted coldly and suddenly took a step forward. With a boom, his aura, which had been raised to the limit, erupted like a volcano at this moment. At the same time, a mysterious aura suddenly rose and filled the entire arena in the blink of an eye. Buzz. Buzz. What made Chen Hao slightly surprised was that Meng Lang's left hand actually condensed talisman symbols and sent them into the large sword in his right hand. Every talisman symbol that fused into the sword caused the treasured sword to hum intensely, and its aura to soar at an extremely terrifying speed. At this moment, although Chen Hao was very strong and wanted to see how strong this guy was when he condensed his aura to the peak, he did not do so. There were more powerful opponents waiting for him, and he had no reason to waste his strength on Meng Lang here. Lose for me. A cold shout suddenly sounded out from Chen Hao's mouth. At the same time, a peerlessly fierce and terrifying fluctuation appeared abruptly as Chen Hao slashed out from afar. To everyone's surprise, Chen Hao's sword strike only emitted a trace of a horrifying force at the beginning, but after it was executed, it seemed to be child's play instead, and it didn't emit any fluctuations. Moreover, the crowd was already flabbergasted. Even if Chen Hao had used some kind of ultimate move, he should have approached his opponent before using it, who would use an ultimate move from several hundred meters away. However, after an instant, Meng Lang, who had yet to condense to the peak, let out a shocking roar and hurriedly made his move. Only then did everyone see a sword light. The sword light was extremely sharp and carried a terrifying whirlpool, as if it could devour everything. Suddenly, it collided with Meng Lang's ultimate move that had not been condensed to its peak state. Great success in the profound mysteries of space. On the rostrum, countless experts sucked in a breath of cold air. Even Yuan Tairan was a little surprised. Chen Hao had the profound mysteries of space. When Chen Hao released his aura without restraint in the star-picking sect, Yuan Tairan had sensed it. However, he did not expect Chen Hao to be able to use the profound mysteries of space in such a magical way on his ultimate move. This kind of fusion could not be done without a strong soul power. Boom. Despicable, shameless. Accompanied by Meng Lang's angry and unwilling roar, his body flew out like a kite with a broken string. While he was still in the air, he spat out a stream of blood. Hiss. At this moment, Chen Hao's figure flashed and caught up with Meng Lang. Without giving Meng Lang any time to react, Chen Hao's sword slashed across his neck, leaving a sure-death bloody mark. Clean and efficient, without the slightest hesitation. It could not be helped. This was the restriction of the rules. Chen Hao's sword strike just now had once again revealed one of his trump cards, and had directly consumed a large amount of true essence. But even so, it was only able to destroy Meng Lang's ultimate move that had not been condensed to the limit, and injure him, but it was unable to cause him to lose his combat strength. If he wanted to end this battle, he could only do this symbolically. What a joke. Do you think I have to wait for you to condense your ultimate move? After doing all this, Chen Hao said loudly. As he spoke, he floated a few hundred feet away and stood proudly. The rules of the competition stated that once the competition started, no spiritual medicine was allowed. To recover, one could only rely on one's own recovery ability. Up until now, Chun Hao had been recovering in the state of being one with the universe when he was at the peak of the late nascent soul stage and half-step incarnation stage. In particular, he had deliberately delayed the last 3 half-step incarnations to recover his true essence to the peak state. However, against Meng Lang's ultimate move, he had consumed 10% of his true essence. Apart from that, the most serious consumption was his essence, qi, and spirit. Next, wait. Before the referee could finish announcing the next contestant, a cold, dignified, and angry voice suddenly interrupted the referee. At this moment, everyone looked toward the rostrum. The Sky Sword sect leader's face was terrifyingly dark as he stared straight at Chun Hao. Brat, you dare to violate the rules of the competition and secretly use spiritual medicine to recover your true essence? How audacious! You're looking down on the 10 immortal sects and deserve to die. Crash! Master Sky Sword's words immediately ignited everyone who was still immersed in shock. Even the sect masters of the other 9 rank 9 sects looked at him with a trace of astonishment. However, the Yuan sect leader, who had the most authority, hesitated for a moment and didn't say anything for some reason. Xiao Lingfeng wanted to say something, but he didn't. Instead, he looked toward the star-seizing sect leader, Yuan Tairan. Sect leader what do you mean? Our star-seizing sect is only a small 3rd-rank sect. How dare we look down on the 10 immortal sects? Our disciples wouldn't do such a thing that violates the rules of the competition. Without any evidence, I hope sect leader will be careful with your words. Yuan Tairan stood up. His heart was filled with rage. He really wanted to fuck this old man's 18 generations of ancestors. However, in the face of a high and mighty 9th rank sect, he could only forcefully suppress the rage in his heart and speak righteously. Haha, be careful with my words. Yuan Tairan, you don't dare, but that doesn't mean your disciples don't dare. Everyone, since I dare to say it, I'm naturally certain. Not only Chun Hao, but Lung Yihan of the Myriad Pill Pavilion must be the same. That's right. At this moment, the Floating Mist sect leader said, everyone think about it. These 2 brats used the same concealment technique that even we couldn't see through to disappear from our sight. This old man admits that these 2 people are rare geniuses, but you can imagine, not to mention them, even in the cultivation world for nearly 1,000 years, which of the top geniuses has this kind of recovery ability? This is absolutely impossible. That's right. Especially Chun Hao, this brat, who is even more arrogant. You should have seen it. Before he fought with Meng Lang, he deliberately delayed for 2 hours, entangling with 3 half-step incarnation realm experts, allowing himself to recover to his peak state. The sect master of the Heavenly Sword sect continued. This is blatantly looking down on our 10 immortal sects. Brother Een and everyone else, this is not as simple as breaking the rules. This crime is punishable by death. This sudden turn of events caused the entire martial arts practice field to buzz with discussion, especially after hearing the words of the 2 great sect leaders. Everyone's gaze turned to Chun Hao and Lung Yihan, who was sitting in the contestant seats. It was obvious that at this time, almost everyone was beginning to suspect something. This couldn't be blamed on anyone else. Chun Hao and Lung Yihan's performance was too exaggerated. Although Helian Wuxia was also exaggerated, she didn't have any weakness and was always under everyone's attention. However, Chun Hao and Lung Yihan were different. The 2 of them were even more exaggerated than Helian Wuxia and used powerful concealment techniques. Originally, they didn't suspect anything because they didn't think in that direction. After all, just because they couldn't sense it didn't mean that the experts and judges on the platform couldn't. But now, they knew that even the sect leaders of the 9th rank sects couldn't sense the 2's auras. This made people suspicious. After all, people weren't made of iron. How could they have such powerful recovery ability? You're just guessing. What proof do you have? Everything depends on the evidence. Although my Myriad Pill Pavilion is only a 7th rank sect, we're not to be bullied. Moreover, why would our Lung Yihan use such underhanded means? The Myriad Pill Pavilion leader, who didn't have any thoughts, suddenly stood up and said with a cold and arrogant expression, especially when he looked at the sect leaders of the Sky Sword sect and the Faint Mist sect, his eyes were shining with intense contempt and anger. When he spoke of Lung Yihan, he was extremely conceited. Chen Hao also disdains to use such methods. Both of them are true geniuses that only appear once in 1,000 years in the Eastern continent. It's fine if some people can't do it themselves, but they still want to slander them with the heart of a villain. My myriad pill pavilion will be the first to disagree. So what if you're the high and mighty Sky Sword sect and the faint Mist sect? What a joke. It's just the two of them who damaged your dignity. After a slight pause, the myriad pill pavilion leader seemed to have thought of something and continued. The myriad pill pavilion leader's words directly ignited the entire martial arts practice field, including the sect leaders on the platform, who all looked at him with shock. No one thought that the myriad pill pavilion leader, who was only a 7th rank sect, would be so strong, so violent, and so arrogant. Yes, it was arrogance. Such a blatant tit-for-tat, and directly pointed out that the sect leaders of the 2 9th rank sects were the heart of a villain. How could this not shock people? They were high and mighty 9th rank sects that no one had been able to shake for hundreds of years. They weren't something that low-level sects below 8th rank sects could compare to. This was because they controlled the life and death of the entire Eastern continent's cultivation world. If they decided to abolish a sect, even if it was an 8th rank sect, they could directly uproot it and completely erase it from the cultivation world. Second update. Maybe many of you didn't see Wuxian's chapter, so I'll say it again. In the future, the update time will be around 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Today is the first time I've changed it, so there will be 2 updates. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m., it should be 4 updates. Wuxian will continue writing. Thank you to the brothers and sisters who donated and voted. Thank you. Chapter 329. Well said, Brother Gu. As 2 of the 10 immortal Dao sects leaders, you represent the entire Eastern continent's cultivation world. But you can't slander us just because we have a genius who's stronger than you. Our Zhaixing sect is only a 3rd rank sect. At worst, we'll be destroyed by you. I, Yuan Tairan, am not to be trifled with, and neither are the Grand Elders of the Zhaixing sect. Without evidence, don't even think about slandering us. I've already sent out the news. If you have the guts, kill the Grand Elders of the Zhaixing sect as well. Haha. What was even more unexpected was that Yuan Tairan, who had been suppressing his anger, exploded at the provocation of the myriad pill pavilion's pavilion master. His arrogant laughter was filled with unwavering determination and arrogance, as if he was going to fight to the death. His words were even more direct than the myriad pill pavilion's sect masters. He also told everyone that he had already sent back the news. What did this mean? Yuan Tairan and all the disciples of the Zhaixing sect, and even the Zhaixing sect, which was millions of miles away, could be destroyed. However, the Grand Elders of the Zhaixing sect could not be killed by them. Not to mention the 6 Grand Elders of the Zhaixing sect. Even if one of them escaped, it would be enough to turn a 9th rank sect upside down. This was the reason why the cultivation world did not dare to destroy the other side, no matter how great the hatred was. This was not to say that the Grand Elder of the Star-Picking sect was very powerful, but if such an expert were to hide in the dark and ignore all the rules of the cultivation world, then what would be the point of the disciples of the 9th rank sects? They would be in danger of being killed at any moment. There were precedents in the world of cultivation for something like this. Good. I didn't think that a 7th rank sect and a 3rd rank sect would dare to be so arrogant. This isn't just provoking the Sky Sword sect and the Floating Mist sect, it's blatantly looking down on the 10 immortal Dao sects. Evidence? They're hiding their tracks, and their true essence is limitless. One person challenging 100 people is evidence. Brother Ian and everyone else, if you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. The Floating Mist sect's sect master said angrily as he looked at the Sky Sword sect master. The 2 of them were second only to the Origin sect in the 10 immortal Dao sects. Even the Origin sect master could not suppress them. What did they have to fear? Come over here. Brat, come here. If you tell me the truth, I can spare your souls. The sect leaders of the Floating Mist sect and the Sky Sword sect made their moves at the same time. 2 extremely terrifying auras enveloped Chen Hao, who had a cold expression on his face, and Lung Yihan, who was in the contestant seats. The terrifying power caused the heavens and earth to change color. The two large hands contained a power that caused everyone to be terrified. At this moment, both Lung Yihan and Chen Hao felt that they were completely locked down. That terrifying aura seemed to have used all the energy in the world to bind the two of them. They couldn't even move. At this moment, Xia Yuyu cried out in fright. Her beautiful little face under the veil was deathly pale. At this moment, Helian Wuxia and Tantai Lian were almost suffocating. No matter what, they never thought that such a situation would occur. They couldn't stop it. They couldn't resist it. They could only despair. He hated himself for being too weak. The star-seizing sect was too weak. The disciples of the star-seizing sect and the myriad pill pavilion were also deathly pale. However, everyone's expressions showed that they were clenching their teeth in this crisis. Screams resounded throughout the martial arts arena. Chaos, chaos, extreme chaos. No one thought that the situation would develop to such an uncontrollable state. How dare you? Open your dog eyes and see what this is. Whoosh. At this moment, the voice of the myriad pill pavilion's pavilion master suddenly resounded throughout the martial arts arena. At the same time, a resplendent light screen rose up, blooming with light brighter than the sun. A mysterious aura instantly enveloped a radius of hundreds of miles. All the clamor and screams seemed to be swallowed up, causing the heavens and earth to fall into silence. This mysterious aura completely surpassed their understanding. Everyone, including the two shameless sect leaders who had used magical powers to capture Chen Hao and Lung Yihan, looked at the void with fear. A token that was only the size of a palm, but it was emitting a mysterious aura, was floating in the air. Countless people in the martial arts practice field stared blankly at it. They didn't know what it meant, because they didn't know what it meant at all. But the sect leader of the Yuan Gate, who had planned to watch the show, was dumbfounded. His eyes were as wide as copper bells, and his body was trembling slightly. Yuan Tairan, who was about to protect Chen Hao, and Xiaoling Feng, who had made his choice, were stunned. Besides shock, there was also a trace of uncontrollable joy. The sect leaders of the other sects were also dumbfounded. Their faces shone with incomparable shock. The two arrogant fellows from the Sky Sword sect and the Floating Mist sect who wanted to capture Chen Hao and Lung Yihan were even more stunned. Their expressions were filled with extreme fear. Their bodies were trembling like sieves. They had completely lost the demeanor of a dignified 9th grade sect. They were so scared that they almost peed their pants. I guessed it right. What a pity. Since they are her people, it won't be good for me to recruit them. Both of their soul powers are abnormally strong. Lung Yihan, this little girl, was obviously created by her using the yin-yang embryo technique. It's just that she hasn't really integrated the yang essence yet. She's a rare seedling. That little guy called Chen Hao, could it be that he was born with a strong soul? And even I can't see through him. Such a person is indeed not suitable to be restrained. In the void, a graceful figure quietly floated, overlooking the entire martial arts arena. She muttered to herself when she saw the pavilion master of the myriad pill pavilion take out the token that had scared everyone silly. As an important member of the Wuxia Immortal Palace, she had long known that it wouldn't be so simple when she was specially sent by the palace master to host the Eastern Continent's inter-sect competition. Otherwise, there would be no need for her to come personally. Therefore, she deliberately didn't appear in the competition these few days. Instead, she hid in Dongxian City and collected all the news about the Eastern Continent's cultivation world. At this moment, she naturally had a deep understanding of the entire Eastern Continent's cultivation world. Moreover, she was very curious when she heard about the influential figures in the inter-sect competition that night at the restaurant. That was why she was investigating in the void today. When she saw Lung Yihan's concealment technique, she had already guessed it. However, she did not expect Chen Hao to know it as well. Moreover, this technique was not unfamiliar to her. Was she not using the heaven and earth integration technique now? The Eastern Continent's cultivation world hasn't changed for hundreds of years. No wonder it has declined to such a state. As the leader of the Eastern Continent's 10 celestial Dao sects, the Origin sect doesn't have the demeanor of the number 1 sect at all. When it's time to show its might, it's hiding at the side and watching the show. When it's not time to show its might, It's overbearing. The Heaven's Sword sect and the Misty sect are the second and third sects respectively, but their sect leaders are so unbearable. As for the rest, other than the Ling Tian sect's sect leader, who still has some celestial Dao demeanor, they've obviously forgotten the purpose of the celestial Dao. So the Palace Master sent me here for this. The sisters are the Palace Master's most valued people. Although it's time for me to appear. I'll help her cover it up. Hiss. A strand of cool breeze blew by. While everyone was stunned as they stared at the command token that was floating in the air, and emitting a myriad of rays of light and profundity, a graceful figure suddenly appeared beside the command token, and she stretched out her hand to grab it. Greetings. Greetings, Celestial Venerable. Greetings, Celestial Venerable. The sect leaders of the Origin sect and all the other sects bowed when they saw this figure. The sect leaders of the Heaven's Sword sect and the Misty sect, in particular, even stuffed their heads into their pants. They were trembling with fear as they broke out in cold sweat. At this moment, how could they not understand what was going on? Of course, in their minds, the Celestial Venerable token was given to the Pavilion Master of the Myriad Pill Pavilion by the Celestial Venerable. Although there were still doubts, this was the only reasonable explanation. Otherwise, how could the Pavilion Master of the Myriad Pill Pavilion be qualified to receive the Celestial Venerable token? Humph. The graceful Celestial Venerable snorted lightly. However, everyone, especially those who had ulterior motives, trembled and broke out in cold sweat. The sect leader of the Origin sect was even more so. As the sect leader of the top 10 immortal Dao sects, he seemed to be uninvolved in such a huge commotion during the inter-sect competition. Furthermore, the Celestial Venerable had seen it with her own eyes. No matter what, he would leave a bad impression and even be held responsible. The immortal Dao sects of the Eastern continent have really opened my eyes. Sect leader Yin, you are really competent as the sect leader of the top immortal Dao sect. Huh? Sect leader Bai, sect leader Gu, you are also good. As the sect leaders of 9th rank sects, you are really broad-minded. Ha. It seems like this immortal is too insignificant. I should have invited the Palace Master to personally host your inter-sect competition. Don't you think so? The Celestial Venerable's sarcastic words silenced the entire martial arts practice field. The three important figures who had been pointed out lowered their heads, and did not dare to breathe loudly. Humph. This immortal will personally evaluate the sects in this inter-sect competition. After the inter-sect competition is over, I want the 10 immortal Dao sects to give me a satisfactory explanation. Of course, the so-called 10 immortal Dao sects may not necessarily be the current ones. Crash! The Celestial Venerable's last sentence finally caused an uproar in the martial arts practice field. Not necessarily the current ones? What did that mean? The sect leaders of the Yuan Gate, Sky Sword sect, and Floating Mist sect were extremely frightened. Keep the token. Hiss. The Pavilion Master of the Myriad Pill Pavilion, who was at a loss, suddenly heard the Celestial Venerable's words. He hurriedly bowed and sincerely received the Celestial Venerable token with both hands. His expression was filled with excitement and gratitude. When the nameless old man had given him the token, he had told him that he could not use it unless it was absolutely necessary. He could not use the token to seek benefits for the sect. Today, it was indeed absolutely necessary, especially when it concerned Lung Yihan's life. How could he still have scruples? Moreover, he knew that this opportunity was definitely a good thing for the Myriad Pill Pavilion. First update. Chapter 330. The reason was simple. Once he took out the token, it would definitely cause a sensation in the entire cultivation world of the Eastern continent. Even the 9th rank sects would have to be courteous to the Myriad Pill Pavilion from now on. What did this mean? It meant that the Myriad Pill Pavilion would be extremely popular. With a period of accumulation and development, they would definitely be able to reach the height of a 9th rank sect, or even surpass it. But the female immortal supremacy who suddenly appeared took away his token. How was he going to explain this to the nameless old man? He didn't know what status the nameless old man had in the Wuxia Immortal Palace, but to be able to give out the immortal supremacy token, it proved that he was definitely not simple. At least not lower than the immortal supremacy in front of him. But he didn't dare to ask for it. Fortunately, the immortal supremacy didn't intend to confiscate it, which made him relieved. Let the competition continue. The female immortal supremacy slowly floated to the main seat in the middle of the rostrum. After sitting down cross-legged, she said faintly, "Strength is everything. This immortal will not be partial to anyone, nor will I bury anyone. There are indeed a few good geniuses in this intersect competition. Although there is still a big gap between you and the other regions, it is very rare for you to be able to grow to such a level in the Eastern continent. Work hard." Phew, Xiaoyu patted her full and bulging chest. She, who was nervous and frightened to the extreme, finally breathed a long sigh of relief at this moment. Helian Wuxi and Tantai Lian were the same. The disciples of the star-picking sect and the myriad pill pavilion also walked out from the state of near despair, suffocation, and anger. They looked at each other, and everyone's face revealed a touch of joy after being reborn. Faintly, they clearly felt that their souls and states of mind seemed to have a trace of enlightenment, and suddenly became clear. Next, the referee's magnificent voice suddenly rang out. Chun Hao took a deep breath, and his angular face flickered with a wisp of unprecedented coldness. No one knew what had happened in Chun Hao's body just now. No one knew that Chun Hao, who had no confidence when he met Wu Ruochen earlier, now had absolute confidence. Pressure. The casual attack of the Heavenly Sword Sect's sect master had exerted enormous pressure on him. Boundless anger had caused him to sink into madness. The seven-colored nascent soul, blood, meridians, muscles, shackles, and even every cell in his dantian, as well as his essence, energy, spirit, and soul, all of them had instantly fallen into a frenzy. A frenzy that seemed to want to pierce through heaven and earth was operating madly. Unfortunately, under the restriction of the Heavenly Sword Sect Master's peerless divine ability, he was unable to unleash even the slightest bit of it. However, it was precisely because of this irresistible pressure that all the power in Chun Hao's body surged and burned. His body had unknowingly become his cauldron, causing all the energy in his body to explode. This feeling was similar to when he had faced the powerful Xiao Jihan for the first time in the Xiao family. Chun Hao had undergone a metamorphosis in just a few seconds. There was no change in his realm. Boom. Wu Ruochen also took a deep breath and flew violently toward the arena. He was extremely frustrated, and the degree of frustration was not inferior to Chun Hao's at all. Originally, when he saw that Chun Hao had defeated Meng Lang, his battle intent had already soared to the peak. That was exactly the result he wanted. He wanted to use his absolute power to viciously crush Chun Hao. He wanted everyone to understand that he, Wu Ruochen, was not inferior to anyone. So what if he was the only one left in the Heavenly Sword Sect? He was the true #1 genius of the Heavenly Sword Sect. He was the one who could ultimately turn the tide. At that time, it could be said that this brother's essence, energy, and battle intent had all reached the peak. He was like a badass with the surname Gao and the name Chao. However, his idiotic sectmaster had suddenly put on a show, which directly caused this brother to fall into a daze. It would have been fine if that show had succeeded. However, not only had it failed, but he had also been smashed on the head by the female celestial supremacy. Although he had not been scared to the point of shitting his pants, his entire body was smelly. This brother had already been scared silly. How could he still have any battle intent left? Fortunately, the female celestial supremacy's words before the start of the competition had reignited his battle intent. Strength was everything. As long as he was strong, why would he need to consider the Heavenly Sword Sect? Only when he was strong would he be truly strong. The aura of the peak of the mid-stage of the embodiment realm instantly filled the entire arena. The terrifying pressure and soaring battle intent caused everyone in the arena to once again lock their eyes on the arena, where Chun Hao and Wu Ruochen were. Without a doubt, this battle would be the most intense battle since the beginning. Moreover, it would definitely be a battle between the top 20 individuals in advance. It seemed that Chun Hao, who had already been chosen by the celestial supremacy, could defeat the super genius Wu Ruochen, who was more than a level higher than him. The buzzing sounds of discussion instantly increased in intensity and quickly spread to every corner of the martial arts practice field. This year's intersect competition's top 20 individuals were already very clear. The sixth group was Chen Hao and Wu Ruochen. No one had expected that Chen Hao would be able to make it to this stage. After all, Chen Hao's strength lay in his potential, not his strength. Originally, everyone thought that the two people in the sixth group would be Wu Ruochen and Meng Lang. But now, Chen Hao had already created a miracle that was beyond everyone's imagination. He had won consecutively and easily defeated Meng Liang, who was in the early stage of the embodiment realm, in his exhausted state. Now he was facing Wu Ruochen, who had the qualifications to become a young master, and was recognized by everyone as being in the top 4. Could Chen Hao, who was only at the peak of the mid-stage of the nascent soul realm, continue to create miracles? On the arena, Chen Hao was as still as a mountain. In the face of Wu Ruochen's terrifying pressure and fighting spirit, his chiseled face did not change in the slightest, except for the incomparably fierce look in his eyes. Clang. Clang. 2 clear sounds of unsheathing rang out almost at the same time. Ah! But it was also at this moment that the entire arena suddenly burst into waves of astonishment. Even Chu Qingtian, Xia Yuyu, and Gu Xing revealed a trace of astonishment. Their expressions were rather strange. Wu Ruochen actually uses a saber? This is too unexpected. No one would have thought that Wu Ruochen, who had always used a sword, would turn into a saber when facing Chen Hao. The 2-meter-long silver saber was slightly blue and emitted a cold and terrifying aura. Mysterious and exquisite runes covered the hilt and body of the saber. The long groove that ran through half of the saber was actually dark red, like solidified blood. It emitted a strong murderous and bloody aura. In Wu Ruochen's hand, it made a buzzing sound, like a thirsty beast that could not wait to kill and drink blood. Just from its appearance alone, everyone knew that this saber was definitely a top-grade spiritual weapon. You're very strong. Until you defeated Meng Lang, I had never taken you seriously. I admit that I underestimated you. You're only in the nascent soul realm. Yet you've forced me to reveal my hidden weapon. You should be proud of yourself. Boom. Following Wu Ruochen's words, a cold, domineering, and majestic saber intent soared at a terrifying speed. The saber intent seemed to want to split the sky and cut the earth. Just the saber intent alone made people feel as if they were facing a saber blade. Saber intent in the mastery of the way of the saber? Hiss. Gasps could be heard in the entire martial arts practice field. If Wu Ruochen's revelation that he was a saber wielder was shocking, then the saber intent realm that he displayed now shocked everyone. Even Chu Qingtian frowned slightly. A saber wielder was as famous as a swordsman. A swordsman was extremely fierce and domineering. Anything that stood in his way would be cut in half, as if he was cutting vegetables. Wu Ruochen's saber intent realm had reached the mastery of the way of the saber. The mastery of the way of the saber was between the 4th heaven and the 6th heaven. Wu Ruochen's saber intent was obviously in the initial stage of the great mastery, which was the peak of the 4th heaven. Even so, everyone was shocked. This was because no one had heard of anyone in the incarnation realm who could cultivate the way of the saber or the way of the sword to the 4th heaven, at least in the eastern mainland. Chen Hao stared at Wu Ruochen, whose aura was still soaring, and his lips curled into a devilish smile. He said calmly, 4th heaven of the way of the saber? Your aura is not bad. Unfortunately, you have no hope of suppressing me with this. It's just like how a shameless person wants to slander me. It's meaningless. Crash. Everyone in the martial arts practice field who was paying attention to Chen Hao was shocked. Even Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian, who were familiar with Chen Hao, were surprised. Did Chen Hao really say this? In everyone's eyes, Chen Hao was a man of few words. He was only cold and had shocking strength. Yet at this moment he had suddenly spoken. Furthermore, his words were so sharp and arrogant, as if he was looking down on the formidable sect master of the Heavenly Sword sect. No one expected Chen Hao to be like this. There was a reason why Chen Hao was like this. First, he was clear about Wu Ruochen's purpose in directly exposing his identity as a saber wielder and saying these words. Whether it was an expert in the way of the saber or the way of the sword, they all paid attention to aura, especially during a peak confrontation. If one could suppress the opponent in terms of aura, it would undoubtedly be the beginning of victory. How could Chen Hao let him have his way? Even if Wu Ruochen couldn't suppress him, he couldn't let his confidence soar, right? Besides, since he wanted to challenge the Sky Sword sect, he had to do it thoroughly. Especially after seeing the ugly face of the Sky Sword sect master, Chen Hao felt even more disdain, anger, and even anger. Anyway, these two guys were trash that Chen Hao had a strong desire to kill. Chen Hao naturally wanted to vent his anger at this moment. And just as Chen Hao said these words, something even more shocking happened. An incomparably sharp sword intent rose from his body without any warning. In an instant, it filled the entire arena. What was extremely shocking was that the saber intent and sword intent emitted by the two people actually collided in the void. In an instant, the entire arena emitted a crackling sound. The peak of the fourth heavenly level of sword intent? This Chen Hao is actually at the fourth heavenly level of the Way of the Sword? Countless voices filled with disbelief instantly resounded throughout the arena. Only a few people who knew Chen Hao well knew that Chen Hao was a swordsman. However, no one knew that he was at the peak of the fourth heavenly level of the Way of the Sword. This was the realm that he had broken through to after going through heaven's punishment. Even Leng Yihan, who knew Chen Hao's combat strength best, was a little surprised. Chapter 331. Looking at Chen Hao, who was like an unsheathed sword, Wu Ruochen's expression changed slightly. Immediately, a trace of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. He said coldly, "A swordsman at the peak of the fourth heaven. Very good. Then let's fight. I'd like to see how a swordsman at the middle stage of the nascent soul realm, like you can compete with me." Whoosh. Wu Ruochen snorted coldly. His vital essence, which had already been gathered to its peak, suddenly surged out. He took a step forward, covering a distance of 100 feet. Amidst the buzzing and trembling of the treasured saber, he slashed a terrifying saber at Chen Hao. The terrifying saber chi condensed into a roaring dragon, violently enveloping Chen Hao. Chi. At the same time, Chen Hao also stabbed out with his sword. It was still a seemingly simple sword move, but the dazzling sword light, driven by the fierce sword comprehension, accurately pierced the head of the saber chi dragon, directly exploding the entire arena. The fierceness, violence, and momentum of this sword completely surpassed Wu Ruochen's at the middle stage of the incarnation realm. Humph! Wu Ruochen's eyes narrowed. He didn't think that the first move would have any effect, but it was so easily broken by Chen Hao, which surprised him. Looking at the fierce sword light condensed and did not dissipate, he once again urged the vigorous and majestic vital essence to meet it violently. Boom! Ding! 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 In an instant, the two of them entered into a close combat situation. The sound of metal clashing rang out, and the sword comprehension and saber comprehension raged. Just the aftermath alone destroyed the entire arena. Even the powerful inhibition had terrifying cracks. The masters guarding the arena constantly sent out energy to repair it in a slightly panicked manner. Everyone in the martial arts practice field looked at the scene in the ring, and their expressions became sluggish. It's too terrifying. Any saber chi or sword light can kill me. I can't see it clearly at all. Senior brother, who has the upper hand? Chen Hao is really powerful, especially his attainments in the Tao of the Sword. It's even more terrifying. He is obviously inferior to Wu Ruochen in terms of absolute strength, but he has completely suppressed Wu Ruochen. The master called senior brother stared at the figure in the arena like a flash of lightning, and said with shock, Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing, Xia Yuyu, Leng Yihan, and the other experts who were basically guaranteed to enter the top 20 were all staring at the arena. Other than these four people who couldn't help but feel an increasingly strong desire to fight, the others had already lost the will to compete with the two just by looking at their current performance. In the face of absolute power, all techniques are useless. What was the use of Wu Ruochen hiding so deeply? Emph. Chu Qingtian snorted in his heart. Encountering either of them will be a difficult battle, especially Chen Hao. Gu Xing's eyes shone brightly, but his expression did not change in the slightest. The episode that happened because of their sect master made him, who was a loner but had his own firm beliefs and principles, feel ashamed and disdainful. At that moment, although his battle intent was rising, he did not have the heart to fight. He had already made his decision. Even if he was a direct descendant of the Floating Mist sect, he still made his decision. Time passed by minute. The more Wu Ruochen fought, the more frustrated he became. Chen Hao's every attack seemed to hit him where it hurt. Even though he clearly had the advantage in terms of strength, he was still suppressed to the point that he could not breathe. No, if this drags on, I won't be able to turn the tables. Wu Ruochen instantly made a decision. At this point, if he still did not want to reveal his strongest move, he would face defeat. Being unable to unleash his aura, and being completely suppressed by his opponent was the greatest taboo for a swordsman. Roar. With a loud roar, Wu Ruochen suddenly bit the tip of his tongue. The vital essence in his body immediately circulated wildly. Carrying the most powerful saber will, he unleashed a powerful attack regardless of the cost. At the same time, his body suddenly flew backward. Boom. After Chen Hao broke Wu Ruochen's attack with his sword, he did not immediately chase after him. Instead, he stared at Wu Ruochen from afar, his eyes releasing an even stronger battle intent. Chen Hao, let's settle this in one move. I didn't expect you to be so strong that you forced me to use my final trump card. Wu Ruochen stared at Chen Hao from a distance of 1,000 feet, and said coldly. As he spoke, his aura suddenly soared at a terrifying speed. The energy of heaven and earth in the entire arena began to churn at this moment. This scene made everyone hold their breaths. Anyone could see that Wu Ruochen was about to use his strongest move, his final trump card. As for the motionless Chen Hao, his expression at this moment was very strange. This was because his aura did not soar at all, and he did not look like he was about to condense his ultimate move. What was even stranger was that it felt like he was struggling with something, and was even a little hesitant. Forget it. Chen Hao was indeed hesitating. Of course, this was only a matter of a moment. If he was slow, it would be too late. Whoosh. Without any warning, Chen Hao's figure flashed and closed the distance of 1,000 feet. At this time, the crowd caught sight of Chen Hao, who was flying quickly in the void. He made a thrusting posture toward Wu Ruochen, who was still 9,000 feet away. His whole body was surrounded by dimensional vortexes, so no one could sense the aura of his sword. However, everyone was surprised. At such a long distance, did Chen Hao want to interrupt his ultimate move like Meng Lang did in the previous battle? In the instant of the electric sparks, Chen Hao's figure flashed again, and moved another 1,000 feet. His thrusting posture had also advanced half a foot. There were only 8,000 feet left. Wu Ruochen, who was condensing his strongest attack, frantically urged the vital essence in his body to circulate in a mysterious and strange route. Seeing Chen Hao approaching quickly, it was impossible for him not to be nervous. After all, Meng Lang was a lesson learned from his mistakes. It was also because of this lesson that Wu Ruochen deliberately pulled the distance to 3,000 feet. In his opinion, 3,000 feet was enough for him to condense his strongest ultimate move. 7,000 feet, 6,000 feet, 5,000 feet, 4,000 feet. Chen Hao's figure flashed rhythmically. In the same instant, in the same 1,000 feet, his thrusting posture would advance a little every time he appeared. In fact, in the entire martial arts arena, except for the masters on the rostrum, the majority of the people in the arena could not see clearly and did not know what was going on. However, Chu Qingtian, Xia Yuyu, Gu Xing, and Leng Yihan were able to see. Moreover, the expressions of the four people were obviously very different. Chu Qingtian looked at Chen Hao with disdain and ridicule. Gu Xing only frowned. Xia Yuyu and Leng Yihan, on the other hand, were a little worried. Because, judging from Wu Ruochen's aura, it was obvious that when Chen Hao was just 1,000 feet away from Wu Ruochen, he would be able to condense his ultimate move. In other words, Chen Hao would not be able to stop him in time. What did that mean? It meant that Chen Hao, who wanted to take advantage of the situation, could only take Wu Ruochen's strongest attack without condensing his ultimate move. 3,000 feet. Wu Ruochen was also calculating Chen Hao's time and speed. At this moment he was about to succeed. His expression shone with extreme disdain and excitement. He knew that he would definitely be the winner of this battle. And Chen Hao, this idiot, would definitely be seriously injured. Suddenly, just when everyone thought that Chen Hao would appear 2,000 feet away from Wu Ruochen, a sharp sword light that contained a terrifying whirlpool that seemed to want to swallow the world appeared within 10 feet of Wu Ruochen without warning. Boom, boom, boom. Ah! Accompanied by a series of exclamations, an unbelievable scene appeared. Wu Ruochen, whose aura was already so powerful that it shocked everyone, was actually in an even worse state than Meng Lang back then. He didn't even have time to react before Chen Hao, who was one with the sword, broke through the layers of true essence barriers and directly pierced through his stomach. What was even more unexpected was that after Chen Hao withdrew his sword, his figure followed like a shadow and caught up to Wu Ruochen, who was flying backwards. He stomped on Wu Ruochen's chest, and like 1,000 pounds of gold, he landed on the arena that was full of sword marks with a bang. Idiot, do you really think my speed is that little? A cold, mocking, and arrogant voice suddenly sounded. Everyone stared blankly at Chen Hao, who was stepping on Wu Ruochen's pig head, whose stomach and mouth were spurting blood like a dead pig. They could not describe their feelings. The entire martial arts practice field was silent and sluggish. Those who did not know what was going on only saw the result. As for those who clearly saw the lightning sparks in that instant, they were all horrified and moved. No one expected Chen Hao to use his intelligence to deceive everyone's eyes and senses in such a pinnacle battle. Of course, this was also the reason why Chen Hao did not display his true speed. In that short moment of sparks, Chen Hao completed an extremely precise plan, which made Wu Ruochen think that Chen Hao was retarded. In his excitement, he did not even manage to react as Meng Lang did, and was stepped on by Chen Hao. How is this possible? How is this possible? Chu Qingtian, who was waiting for Chen Hao to make a fool of himself, finally opened his eyes wide. His heart was filled with boundless shock. Not only was he shocked by Chen Hao's despicable and shameless actions, but he was even more shocked by Chen Hao's speed. Yes, it was speed. It had to be said that Chen Hao was able to deceive everyone's eyes not because of how intelligent he was. It was because he hid it too well. No one expected Chen Hao's speed to reach such an unbelievable level. After all, Chen Hao's speed had already reached the level of an expert in the incarnation realm when he was a few hundred meters ahead. How could it suddenly increase by 3 times? What a pervert! Leng Yihan, who was originally filled with worry, murmured with a smile that even he himself didn't realize was so charming. Yeah, he's really a pervert. Hearing Leng Yihan's slightly changed voice, Xia Yuyu looked at Leng Yihan. This look made Xia Yuyu's eyes widen. She shivered on behalf of Chen Hao and murmured the same words. However, only the little girl herself knew who she was referring to as a pervert. What an interesting little guy. On the rostrum, the female immortal stared at Chen Hao. Her eyes did not hide her admiration for Chen Hao as she thought to herself. Even she did not expect such an ending. Chapter 332. Chen Hao. Chen Hao wins. Star-picking sect wins. After being stunned for more than 10 seconds, the referee finally realized his duty. With a trembling voice, he announced the result of the match. Wu Ruochen, who looked like a dead pig, was taken back by the Sky Sword sect's disciples. The hole in his stomach, the bloody pig head, and the fact that Chen Hao had purposely stepped on him so hard that he no longer resembled a human, made the disciples of the Sky Sword sect wish they could find a hole to crawl into. The buzzing sounds of discussion were extremely ear-piercing. However, the members of the dignified Rank 9 sect, who used to be arrogant, did not even dare to let out a fart at this moment. When Chen Hao jumped down from the ring and flew to the contestant area, the star-picking sect's disciples cheered excitedly. Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian hugged each other excitedly, their faces flushed red. Xiaolanlan, Duan Yufei, and the others who were sitting with Helian Wuzi and Tantai Lian also looked happy, but they did not dare to shout out loud. The last 3 rounds of the sect tournament became boring. When the sky was completely dark, the curtains finally came to an end. The star-picking sect's momentum skyrocketed as they obtained a complete victory. The top 20 contestants were determined on the spot based on the performance of all the disciples. For example, Zhao Yuanqing and the others who had never had the chance to fight were only nominated, but no one dared to challenge them in their groups. Each group had 2 people. Among the top 10 ninth-rank sects, except for the 2 groups that Chen Hao and Leng Yihan were in, where only one person from the Sky Sword sect and the Piao Miao sect made it into the top 20, the other 8 ninth-rank sects all had 2 people. 18 of the top 20 spots were occupied. Even so, it was the first time in hundreds of years that a non-ninth grade sect's disciple entered the top 20. These 2 people were Leng Yihan and Chen Hao. Leng Yihan led the 10,000 Pill Pavilion and broke the unshakable legend of the Sky Sword sect. Chen Hao led the star-picking sect and created a legend. The legend of 10 people from a 3rd grade sect defeating nearly 200 people from a 9th grade sect. That night, countless cultivators in Dongxian City gathered in restaurants, tea houses, and other places of various sizes. Countless cultivators also swarmed into merchant guilds of various sizes to participate in the bets for the top 20. Chen Hao and Leng Yihan, who had not been favored, had improved tremendously. This was especially so for Chen Hao, who was second only to Chu Qingtian and Xia Yuyu. Even Gu Xing was pushed aside under Chen Hao. Leng Yihan, on the other hand, was at the same level as Gu Xing and Wu Ruochen. Of course, this was because Leng Yihan was valued by the female immortal master. Otherwise, although Leng Yihan's performance was terrifying, it was only in terms of recovery and endurance. The absolute combat power he displayed was still far from Wu Ruochen and Chen Hao's. After returning to the monastery, Yuan Tairan, the 4 grand elders, and all the disciples gathered in the main hall. Naturally, they could not avoid praising Chen Hao, Helian Wuzi, Tantai Lian, and all the other star-picking sect disciples. It had to be said that Yuan Tairan was very satisfied with everyone's performance today. Moreover, Yuan Tairan and the 4 grand elders could clearly feel that there was a cohesive force in everyone's bodies that the star-picking sect disciples had never had before. Alright, you can all go back. After this inter-sect competition, I believe that you have all learned a lot. Use these 3 days to consolidate it. If you want to go out for a walk, don't worry. The Immortal Master has already spoken, and I believe that they will not dare to act recklessly. Chen Hao, you stay. I will take you to the Myriad Pill Pavilion. Yes, Sect Master. Hearing the Sect Master's words, the others left one after another. Indeed, as the Sect Master had said, all of them had gained a lot. The top 20 competition had nothing to do with them. Only Chen Hao would participate. But that was still 3 days later. These 3 days were undoubtedly the best time for them to consolidate their understanding. Sect Master, I won't go, right? After everyone left, Chen Hao said with some difficulty, I have to compete in 3 days. I have to cultivate quickly. I gained a lot today. We will be back soon. We won't delay your cultivation. Although the Myriad Pill Pavilion's pavilion master was implicated today, he clearly helped us at the time. Moreover, he didn't do it because of the star-picking sect, but because of your relationship with Leng Yihan. Of course, he also saw your potential and talent. Although the Immortal Master suppressed it in the end, we should still pay him a visit and thank him. Besides, Yuan Tairan paused for a moment, then stopped hiding and continued. Today we completely broke off relations with the Sky Sword sect. Although it's nothing for now, it's hard to guarantee that there won't be any problems in the future. The Sky Sword sect is a 9th rank sect. Even if the Immortal Master reprimanded them, their foundation and strength are still there. They won't be wiped out. Our star-picking sect's situation will be very difficult in the future. Moreover, the Myriad Pill Pavilion has the Immortal Master's token, and is a peak 7th rank sect. It's very possible. Do you understand what I mean? All right, Chen Hao replied. Since Yuan Tairan had said so, no matter how unwilling Chen Hao was, he could only go. After the 2 of them arrived at the courtyard of the Myriad Pill Pavilion, although they were personally welcomed by the Myriad Pill Pavilion's pavilion master, they only sat for a short while before taking their leave. Firstly, Chen Hao wanted to cultivate, and secondly, there were too many people who came to visit. Yuan Tairan couldn't help but sigh. The snobbishness of the cultivation world was definitely greater than that of the secular world. Fortunately, The Myriad Pill Pavilion's pavilion master was clearly much more enthusiastic towards Yuan Tairan and Chen Hao, especially Chen Hao. Even the sect masters present were full of praise for Chen Hao. Chen Hao responded calmly, neither servile nor overbearing. He didn't have the slightest bit of pride and arrogance that a young man should have. This made everyone praise Chen Hao even more in their hearts. Little did they know that this guy had enjoyed countless praises in his previous life. This little bit of praise was really nothing. He accepted it as a matter of course. Fortunately for Chen Hao, Lung Yihan had already entered the state of cultivation. After hearing about Lung Yihan's situation from Xia Yuyu today, Chen Hao felt like avoiding him like a snake or scorpion. If he could avoid him, he really didn't want to see him. Chen Hao, let's go to the Ling Tian sect again. To Chen Hao's surprise, Yuan Tairan suddenly said this when the two of them had just walked out of the Myriad Pill Pavilion's courtyard. Cough cough. Sect master, I'm not going to the Ling Tian sect. Chen Hao actually refused directly. What's wrong? The Ling Tian sect has helped you a lot. Previously, because of Fan Fong, they came out once. Today, if it weren't for the pavilion master's token, Xiao Lingfeng would have helped you. He helped me? Did he? Chen Hao was slightly stunned. Of course. Why would I lie to you? I'm not afraid that you'll laugh at me. When the Heaven Sword sect accused you, I was indeed timid. Even if I wanted to come out, I didn't dare to speak so decisively. This was because I knew that once there was a conflict, it could mean the star-picking sect's annihilation. I couldn't joke about the countless lives and thousands of years of foundation of the star-picking sect. The reason I dared to do that was because Sect Master Xia hinted that he would support me. No matter what, you should pay him a visit, right? No. He should be the one paying me a visit. Sect Master, forgive me for not being able to comply. Chen Hao frowned slightly and pondered for a while, but he still said resolutely. Obviously, there was no room for negotiation. What he said shocked Yuan Tairan so much that his jaw almost dropped to the ground. Let the sect master of a 9th grade sect pay him a visit? Cough cough. Don't tell me you have a grudge with the Ling Tian sect? Or are you prejudiced against Sect Master Xia? It's not a grudge. I'm definitely prejudiced. Sect Master, there's no room for discussion. If you want to go, you can go by yourself. I'll go back first. Gasp. After Chen Hao finished speaking, he turned into a stream of light and left quickly, leaving behind a stunned Yuan Tairan. How could this brat have anything to do with the sect master of the Ling Tian sect? How could he be prejudiced against him? Yuan Tairan shook his head and could not figure it out. He could only pay him a visit himself. How? Chen Hao had just appeared at the entrance of the star-picking sect's courtyard when he heard the affectionate call. It almost made Chen Hao jump. You. Why are you here? Looking at the figure in front of him, Chen Hao asked in surprise. This was not a clone but the real Xia Yuyu. Why? Don't you welcome me? It's not just Yuyu who's here, hehe. What do you mean? Chen Hao was slightly stunned and immediately released his powerful perception. However, he could not capture any aura. To be exact, the entire courtyard hall was enveloped by a mysterious aura that blocked all probing auras. You'll find out later. Let's go. Xia Yuyu took the initiative and directly pulled Chen Hao to the courtyard hall. Chen Hao frowned slightly, and his expression became a little awkward. Could it be that the old man really came to visit him? When he thought of this, Chen Hao's expression changed instantly. Fuck, I don't care if you're Yuyu's grandfather. You dared to look down on me back then, so don't expect me to be nice to you today. If it wasn't for Yuyu being reasonable, considerate, gentle, obedient, and lovable, I'm not Chen Hao if I don't ruthlessly trample on you back. Although it seemed like he still did not have the ability to trample on you, there would be a day when he would. This was something that Chen Hao firmly believed. Just as Chen Hao and Xia Yuyu were about to enter the courtyard hall, Yuan Tairan also hurried back. The instant he saw Chen Hao, this old man's face was filled with astonishment and confusion. He transmitted. Brat, no matter what, a grand 9th rank sect master has brought his precious granddaughter here. Can't you give him some face? A 3rd rank sect, a 9th rank sect, personally coming to visit us. Yuan Tairan, don't have that face. You quickly come in. At the same time, Yuan Tairan said to Xia Yuyu in an intimate manner. Greetings, Sect Master Yuan. Xia Yuyu smiled and bowed. Good, brother Xia. I was just about to pay my respects to you. But I didn't expect you to come instead. How can I not feel embarrassed? When Yuan Tairan saw the door open, he hastily rushed in and cupped his fists. Chen Hao and Xia Yuyu also walked in, and saw the four elders respectfully standing in front of Xia Lingfeng. There's no need to be polite. Yuyu, this little girl just had to drag this old man here. Haha. Xia Lingfeng stroked his beard and laughed. As he spoke, his gaze swept over Chen Hao, who was being pulled by Xia Yuyu. Although his old face did not show anything, his heart was tangled. This stinking brat, I, a grand 9th rank sect master, specially came here. I've already made way for you by several streets, and you're still giving me attitude? If it weren't for Yuyu's face, if it weren't for the ranking competition in 3 days. Chapter 334. Aren't you going to greet sect leader Xia? Yuan Tairan said to Chen Hao awkwardly. Chen Hao frowned. He didn't even look at Xia Lingfeng. He didn't bend his waist. Instead, he raised his head slightly. He straightened his neck and cupped his fists. He didn't even say a word. Even so, he was still grumbling in his heart. Humph, if it wasn't for Yuyu's sake, why would I bow to you? Cough cough. Brother Xia, this boy has always been like this. Please don't lower yourself to his level. It's fine, it's fine. Although Xia Lingfeng said so, he looked at Chen Hao and said, Boy, it seems like you're still holding a grudge against the old man because of what happened back then. What's past is past. What's the point of talking about it? Chen Hao said coldly when he heard Xia Lingfeng's words. Xia Yuyu smiled sweetly and did not interrupt. As for Yuan Tairan and the 3 elders, they were all stunned. Although Yuan Tairan had guessed that Chen Hao had a grudge with the Ling Tian sect, he did not expect it to be with Xia Lingfeng. One was in the sky while the other was on the ground. How could they have crossed paths? All right. Then, old man won't be long-winded with you. You just have to put yourself in his shoes. You're really stubborn. Also, the old man came today because of Yuyu. Don't think that he's giving in. Brother Yuan, the old man has just told the 3 elders about the ranking competition in 3 days. This is the information that the Ling Tian sect found. Take it. That's all. Brother Yuan, the old man will leave first. Yuyu, come with me. Xia Lingfeng said as he pulled Xia Yuyu and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Cough cough. Boy, what's going on? Yuan Tairan looked at Chen Hao and asked. His intuition told him that it must have something to do with Xia Yuyu. Especially when Xia Lingfeng said that he was doing it because of Yuyu. It shocked Yuan Tairan even more. What did that mean? It was because the relationship between Chen Hao and Xia Yuyu was very, very good. Thinking about how Xia Yuyu had been sitting with Chen Hao for the past few days, he was even more certain. Also, he knew about the conflict between Chen Hao and Wu Ruochen. It was just that he didn't dare to think too deeply about it. Sect Master, what's there to ask about such trivial matters? Chen Hao said. It's such a trivial matter. Yet you're giving the dignified sect leader of a 9th rank sect a hard time? Tell me what happened. Do you and Xia Yuyu also have that kind of relationship? Ahem. I'm going to cultivate. Kid, take this with you. It should be information on the top 20. Take a good look. Seeing that Chen Hao was about to slip away, Yuan Tairan tossed a book of information that Xia Lingfeng had left behind to Chen Hao. Do you guys think that Chen Hao and Xia Yuyu are together? After Chen Hao left, Yuan Tairan looked at the 3 elders and asked. I think so. That day when Chen Hao and Wu Ruochen had a conflict, Xia Yuyu's behavior clearly showed that she has an unusual relationship with Chen Hao. Moreover, the 2 of them have been sitting together for the past few days. And just now, did you see how intimate the 2 of them were? They even did it in front of her grandfather. Yes, it should be. No, it must be. When the Ling Tian sect stood up for Chen Hao, I was a little surprised. Although Chen Hao's innate talent was strong, it was only ordinary compared to the genius disciples of 9th rank sects. They shouldn't have paid so much attention to him just because he saved Xiao Lanlan and Duan Yufei. Now I understand that it's all because of Xia Yuyu. It's not just because of Xia Yuyu now. Nobody doesn't pay attention to the innate talent that Chen Hao displayed. I'm afraid he'll reach a height that we can't imagine in the future. Otherwise, Xiaoling Feng, the dignified sect leader of a 9th-rank sect, wouldn't give in to a little guy like him. He wouldn't use his precious granddaughter to speak. You must know that Chu Qingtian from the Origin sect and Wu Ruochen from the Heaven Sword sect came to propose marriage, but he didn't agree. It seems like it's true. Moreover, Xiaoling Feng didn't object? Haha. I can't believe that Chen Hao's Peach Blossom game is so high. This Xia Yuyu is really good. She's innocent, pure, and cute. Her words and actions are casual, and she doesn't hide her reservations at all. She dared to be so intimate with Chen Hao in front of her grandfather and us, but she didn't hide her feelings for Chen Hao at all. This is great. Yuan Tai Ran said excitedly as he stroked his beard. Phew. After entering the cultivation room, Chen Hao had a comfortable and proud smile on his face as he let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally gotten back some interest for being able to drive that old man away in anger. Chen Hao's divine will poured into the information jade slip that Xiaoling Feng had left behind. It contained detailed information about Chu Qingtian, Gu Xing, Wu Ruochen, and the other disciples of the rank 9 sects who had made it into the top 20. This information was undoubtedly impossible for the Zhaixing sect to find out, because it contained the secret techniques and hidden abilities that each person might have cultivated. Although it was impossible to find out all the trump cards of each person, it still listed the secret techniques that they might have cultivated, as well as the characteristics and powers of the secret techniques. Moreover, what surprised Chen Hao was that every time Xiaoling Feng introduced a secret technique, he would simulate the aura and mysteries of the technique in Chen Hao's mind. He would also specifically explain how to deal with an absolute difference in strength. Although this old man didn't mention Chen Hao's name from the beginning to the end, he was very dedicated to Chen Hao. Apart from that, he also specifically reminded him of the dangers of the top 20 ranking competition, especially the Yuan Gate, Sky Sword sect, and Floating Mist sect's possible actions against Chen Hao. This goodwill was more sincere than him personally coming over just now. Forget it, I can't go overboard. After all, he is Yu Yu's grandfather, and the main culprit is Yu Yu's father. If he hadn't stopped me, I would have been finished. Chen Hao thought to himself after he finished reading the information in the jade slip. Then he said, "The most important thing is that Chu Qingtian actually asked me to give up. It seems like even he can't estimate Chu Qingtian's hidden abilities. Also, the Yuan Gate's essence energy empowerment. I want to see how strong Chu Qingtian is. The essence energy empowerment can at most raise that fellow to the peak of the avatar stage. The same level as Yu, right? As for the lack of rules, I prefer it." After taking a deep breath, Chen Hao waved his sword in his mind and cut off all distracting thoughts. He immediately immersed himself in his cultivation. Yuan Gate, Chu Qingtian's cultivation room. Qingtian, it's up to you this time. You have already reached the peak of the middle stage of the avatar stage. I will use 100 years of my cultivation to help you this time, and it will definitely raise you to the peak of the late stage. Furthermore, it won't affect your future cultivation. That immortal supremacy has already expressed his dissatisfaction with our Yuan Gate, and it's because of Lung Yihan and Chen Hao. The top 20 ranking competition is a competition that truly concerns your own destiny. It's not like the group competition where there are restrictions. Therefore, you have to remember that a dead genius is no longer a genius. When you display your true abilities, I believe that immortal supremacy will change. Don't worry, sect leader. I, Chu Qingtian, will never allow anyone to surpass me. As long as they have the ability to meet me, I guarantee that they will die. Not to mention that sect leader will help me raise my cultivation to the peak of the late stage. Even now, I am confident. You just have to deal with the judge, and don't interfere too early. That's good. I'll take your confidence as absolute. Haha. I believe that we are not the only ones who will deal with the judge. Sky Sword sect and Floating Mist sect are even worse off than us. Let's begin. Floating Mist sect. The same scene happened in Gu Xing's cultivation room. However, the Floating Mist sect's sect leader did not forcefully raise Gu Xing's cultivation level. But what he said was more or less the same as the Yuan Gate leader. A dead genius was no longer a genius. As long as he could defeat Chun Hao and Leng Yihan as much as possible in the top 20 ranking competition before the immortal supremacy announces, it would be even better if he could kill them. This would more or less solve the sex crisis. This was something that the Yuan Gate leader had thought of, and so had he. It was just that they did not have the Yuan Gate's method of forcefully raising their disciples' cultivation level, so he could only let Gu Xing try his best. After all, Chun Hao's combat strength had already surpassed Wu Ruoqin's. Although it was because of his wisdom that he won by a fluke, it had to be said that Chun Hao was very strong. Whether Gu Xing could defeat him was still a question. However, he did not know that Gu Xing, who had always been a man of few words, shook his head lightly after he left, and a look of disdain flashed across his cold face. Sky Sword Sec's side courtyard, Wu Ruoqin's cultivation room. Wu Ruoqin, who was severely injured by Chun Hao, was now naked, and his body was emitting a crimson light, as if he was wrapped in layers of flames. This aura was clearly the holy healing medicine, the Nirvana pill. After a full hour, when the Nirvana pill's medicinal power was completely refined by Wu Ruoqin, and his wounds were completely healed, a dense aura suddenly rose from his body. In an instant, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the entire cultivation room surged wildly, and it lasted for a full 2 hours before this dense aura disappeared. Wu Ruoqin slowly opened his eyes, and 2 sharp rays of light shone out. His face was filled with extreme surprise, and he said, "Late-stage incarnation realm. Haha, the Nirvana pill is indeed a holy healing medicine. Not only did it completely heal my injuries, but it also allowed me to break through my limits. My strength has probably increased by a full 40%. It's enough, it's enough." As he spoke, Wu Ruoqin's face began to distort strangely, and it became extremely gloomy and filled with monstrous anger. "Chun Hao, I will make you pay for the humiliation today 100 times, 1,000 times. If you didn't use despicable means, how could you be my opponent? And now, I've improved. Haha. There are no rules in the top 20. If I, Wu Ruoqin, don't smash you into pieces, I swear I'm not human." 3 days later, the fiery red sun emitted thousands of rays of golden light, and poured down on the incomparably huge martial arts practice field. At this moment, the martial arts practice field, which was hundreds of miles in radius, was already filled with a sea of people. The buzzing sounds of discussion and disputes were incessant, and they were like flies that filled every corner of the martial arts practice field. The competition had not yet started, and the audience had already started to fight. Obviously, the topic of the dispute was who would be the 4 great young masters this year, and what the ranking of the 4 great young masters was, and so on. The questions that everyone was most concerned about. First update. Chapter 335. It can't be? The peak of the late stage of the embodiment realm. What a powerful aura. Chu Qingtian attracted everyone's attention the moment he arrived at the martial arts practice field. All of them widened their eyes in shock. Obviously, no one expected Chu Qingtian, who was still at the peak of the middle stage of the embodiment realm 3 days ago, to be at the peak of the late stage of the embodiment realm now. I knew that the Yuan Gate would do this, but I didn't expect Chu Qingtian to be able to raise his cultivation by an entire level. That's impressive. It seems like he has a greater chance of getting first place. Xia Yuyu shouldn't be his match. The sect leader of the rank 9 sect was different from the rest. The Yuan Gate's origin essence empowerment technique was top secret. However, they knew about it. They had guessed that the sect leader of the Yuan Gate would sacrifice his cultivation to help Chu Qingtian under Xia Yuyu's threat. However, no one expected Chu Qingtian to be able to raise his cultivation from the peak of the middle stage to the peak of the late stage. Xiao Lingfeng looked at Chu Qingtian with a hint of depression and helplessness. He was the one who understood Yuyu's true strength the most. Before Chu Qingtian appeared, he still had a glimmer of hope. However, it seemed like Xia Yuyu wasn't Chu Qingtian's match. Although Xia Yuyu's talent was high, and her battle prowess was also extremely powerful, without the advantage of strength, she was undoubtedly lacking in battle experience. Moreover, Xia Yuyu had never experienced any life or death situation since she was young. Xia Lingfeng couldn't be sure about her ability to withstand pressure and counterattack in adversity. He actually reached the peak of the late stage of the embodiment realm. How, if you meet him, you have to be extra careful. Yuyu knows that you won't listen to grandfather, but it's better to be careful. Xia Yuyu transmitted her voice to Chen Hao with a hint of worry on her beautiful face. In 3 days, Chen Hao didn't produce any miracles. His cultivation didn't increase at all. These fellows are all powerful. Chu Qingtian has unleashed the essence energy empowerment technique to the extreme, and the heavily injured Wu Ruochen has advanced to the middle stage of the embodiment realm. This is getting more and more interesting, Chen Hao said with a smile. Interesting? How you can't be that confident, right? Hearing Chen Hao's words, Xia Yuyu couldn't help but turn to look at Chen Hao and transmit her voice. We'll only know after we fight. You can rest assured, Chen Hao said. How about another bet? At this time, Leng Yihan also turned his head and stared at Chen Hao. The corner of his mouth flashed with strong confidence as he sent a telepathic message. If you win this round, we'll be even. We won't owe each other anything. I couldn't ask for more. What do you want to bet? Chen Hao turned to Leng Yihan. Let's bet on whether I can defeat Wu Ruochen. Ahem. Hearing Leng Yihan's words, Chen Hao was a little dumbfounded. How do we bet? That's between the two of you. It has nothing to do with me, right? Why don't you bet on our rankings, or on our battle? If I defeat Wu Ruochen, then I win. If I lose, it's my loss and we're even. Leng Yihan ignored Chen Hao's question and said confidently. Seeing Chen Hao's slightly shocked expression, Xia Yuyu frowned slightly, but she didn't know what the two were talking about. If that's the case, okay. I'll bet with you. Chen Hao pondered for a while and said. Wu Ruochen's level had increased. Even he had to be careful when facing him. Although Leng Yihan definitely had some hidden strength, in Chen Hao's opinion, it was still limited. It was unlikely that he could defeat Wu Ruochen. Moreover, Chen Hao couldn't think of any hidden strength that Leng Yihan had that would allow him to defeat Wu Ruochen. The odds of winning and losing were at best 50-50. It was worth a bet. After all, Chen Hao still owed him a promise. Even if he really won, it would just be adding one more. Too many debts, one wouldn't worry. But if he lost, it would be even. But why don't you compete with me? This doesn't fit your personality, Chen Hao said with a little pride. What's there to be proud of? It's only temporary. Wait for me. You'll understand when the time comes. Leng Yihan stopped talking halfway. At 7 o'clock, the female immortal appeared on the main seat on the rostrum punctually. She glanced at the respectful sect leaders and said lightly, You may begin. The 10-sided arena had already become an incomparably huge arena. The powerful enchantment seal was clearly much stronger than it was during the group stage. When the judge gave the order, Chu Qingtian, and a weakling in the top 20 took the stage first. There was no elimination in the top 20 ranking competition. Everyone had to fight with the other 19 people. The order of the matches was directly arranged by the judge based on everyone's performance. Chu Qingtian, Xia Yuyu, Wu Ruochen, Chen Hao, Gu Xing, and Leng Yihan's order of appearance was based on the judge's estimation of their strength. If the contestants hadn't recovered to their peak state before the start of the next match, they could request for a delay. It was very fair. After 14 rounds of matches, a total of 140 matches, Chu Qingtian, Xia Yuyu, and Chen Hao all won, just like the judge's estimation. During this time, no one admitted defeat. Even if they met experts like Chu Qingtian and Xia Yuyu, who they knew were undefeatable, they would still fight with all their strength. After all, this was a chance to perform in front of the female immortal. Even if there was a slight chance of being chosen, they would still fight with all their might. In these 14 rounds of matches, Chu Qingtian and Xia Yuyu's strength was fully displayed. They defeated their opponents easily within 3 moves. Wu Ruochen, Gu Xing, and Leng Yihan also performed well. Although they weren't as good as Chu Qingtian and Xia Yuyu, they won easily. On the contrary, it was Chen Hao who had to waste a lot of time every time. No matter how strong or weak his opponent was, This guy always fought slowly. He didn't have the courage and valiance that he had in the past 2 days, allowing his opponent to unleash their full potential. But in the end, it was always a failure. In everyone's opinion, Chen Hao must be hiding his trump card. Also, it was because his cultivation was too low that he used such a fighting method. However, some sharp-eyed experts noticed that Chen Hao was acting strangely. This guy didn't treat the competition as a competition at all. He treated it as a battle to train himself. It had to be said that because of his cultivation, when he didn't use his trump card, he couldn't defeat anyone easily. After these 14 rounds of difficult battles, Chen Hao's control and utilization of his strength had obviously improved by a level. However, only a few people could see it. In the 15th round, the exciting match that everyone was waiting for finally arrived. First round, Chu Qingtian versus Leng Yihan. Whoosh. As the referee's voice rang out, the dull martial arts arena finally became lively for the first time. It couldn't be helped. The previous matches were all about the strong versus the weak, or the weak versus the weak that not many people paid attention to. At this moment, the dark horse Leng Yihan and the publicly acknowledged strongest Chu Qingtian appeared. At least it was more interesting. Leng Yihan will definitely lose against Chu Qingtian. I wonder if Chu Qingtian can finish the match in 3 moves? Or does Leng Yihan have an even stronger trump card? It's possible. Leng Yihan is someone that the Immortal Supreme values. He even gave the Immortal Supreme's token. How can such a person be so simple? However, it's obviously impossible for him to win against Chu Qingtian. Let's see how far he can push Chu Qingtian. Many people in the crowd discussed as they looked at Leng Yihan and Chu Qingtian. Leng Yihan took a deep breath and stood up. A cold battle intent rose from his body. Be careful. Don't be ruthlessly attacked by this guy. When Leng Yihan leaped up, Chen Hao hesitated for a moment before reminding him. Chen Hao was more or less conflicted. He avoided Leng Yihan like he was a snake or a scorpion, but deep in his heart, he couldn't see Leng Yihan as an opponent or an enemy. This feeling was very strange. It was so strange that Chen Hao wondered if he really had the tendency to have goosebumps just thinking about it. Leng Yihan's body froze for a moment before he sped up and stepped onto the arena. Chu Qingtian stood with his hands behind his back. The aura around him was no different from the previous matches. It was still dominating and looking down on everyone. However, deep in his eyes, there was a trace of coldness and viciousness that he didn't have when facing others. Feeling the aura on Chu Qingtian's body, Leng Yihan's expression turned serious. He knew very well that even if he exposed all his trump cards, he wouldn't be Chu Qingtian's opponent. Keeping his trump cards to deal with Wu Ruochen and Gu Xing was undoubtedly the best choice. However, Leng Yihan didn't plan to do that. This was because he knew that the abnormal Chen Hao would definitely exceed his expectations again. This was his intuition. When he saw Chen Hao's expression when he saw Chu Qingtian arrive, he understood this. Therefore, he had to force Chu Qingtian to use his trump cards as much as possible. Why don't you use your concealment skills? When the referee announced the start of the match, Chu Qingtian didn't make a move. Instead, he stared at Leng Yihan arrogantly and said with contempt, "Why would I need to conceal myself to deal with you?" Leng Yihan said with disdain. "Is that so? When you're at my level, I might believe you. But now, I'll make you get out of the arena within 10 moves. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Qingtian's aura surged violently. He wanted to provoke Leng Yihan, but he didn't dare to be too arrogant and vicious. After all, Leng Yihan's sect was able to obtain the Celestial Supreme token. It was obvious that the Celestial Supreme valued Leng Yihan. More or less, he had to be wary of the Celestial Supreme's feelings. Humph. Then let's try. Clang. Leng Yihan unsheathed his sword. The dazzling lightning sword light suddenly lit up the entire arena. Whoosh! At this moment, the entire arena was filled with exclamations and gasps. Everyone stared at Leng Yihan with wide eyes. Their expressions were filled with disbelief. How is this possible? Did I sense it wrongly? Everyone, including the elder on the rostrum, asked in disbelief. Second update. Today's condition is really bad. The plot is about to turn. Wu Shan has a lot to think about. The speed is very slow. I'm screwing up. Wuxian continued to write. If he can finish before 12, he will update the third chapter. I suggest that everyone wait. Wuxian can't be sure if he can finish before 12. You can read it tomorrow. Also, I'm shamelessly asking for monthly votes and subscriptions. Wuxian is really working hard, but his speed is too slow. If you like this work, you are welcome to come to Qidian. Chapter 336. The Legendary Destruction Sword Principle. It must be. The Destruction Sword Principle. A sword principle genius who comprehended the Destruction Sword Principle actually appeared in our eastern continent. No wonder Lung Yihan was chosen by the Celestial Venerable first. The Destruction Sword Principle is extremely rare even in the powerful central continent, let alone our eastern continent. The buzz of discussion on the rostrum was even more shocking than the cultivators in the audience. After all, although there was no lack of experts among the cultivators in the audience, there were very few who could recognize the aura of the Destruction Sword Principle. Therefore, although many people were shocked by the Destruction Sword Principle that Lung Yihan suddenly emitted, as if he wanted to destroy everything in front of him, they did not know what this aura was. On the rostrum, the sect leader was much more knowledgeable. Even those who had never seen the Destruction Sword Principle could guess from Lung Yihan's aura. How could they not be shocked? But the most shocked was Chen Hao. It was not a big deal that Lung Yihan revealed his sword essence, and it was not a big deal that he had the Destruction Sword Principle. The Destruction Sword Principle was the sword principle that Chen Shui inherited from the core palace of the Sky City. That was a once-in-a-century Sky City, and it was a relic where the geniuses of the three forces gathered. How much opportunity did one have to obtain it? Moreover, it wasn't something that would appear every time a sky castle appeared. That was impossible. But now, Lung Yihan actually revealed the aura of the Destruction Sword Principle. And it was the third heaven of the Sword Principle. Is this really a coincidence? Could Lung Yihan be? Impossible. Chen Shui's aura is completely different from his. Moreover, the bloodline aura of a man and a woman are completely different. This can't be fake, right? Chen Hao stared at Lung Yihan in a daze as he thought to himself. No matter what, he did not expect Lung Yihan's hidden trump card to be the Destruction Sword Principle. The Destruction Sword Principle. How? I did not expect that he could comprehend the Destruction Sword Principle. Unfortunately, his sword principle is only at the third heaven, and his cultivation is only at the peak of the early stage incarnation realm. Otherwise, even Chu Qingtian would not be his opponent. I heard grandfather say that the Destruction Sword Principle is one of the 4 strongest sword principles. It is ranked second with the Immortal Sword Principle and the Creation Sword Principle, second only to the Mortal Sword Principle. Originally, Chen Hao was still immersed in the shock and suspicion brought by Lung Yihan, but Xiao Yuyu's sudden voice transmission made him turn his head abruptly to look at Xiao Yuyu. Yuyu, what did you say? Didn't you hear? Lung Yihan's Destruction Sword Dao is very powerful. No, I mean you said that the secular sword principle is the strongest sword principle. Chen Hao asked in amazement and disbelief. After all, Chen Hao had comprehended the secular sword principle. When his father talked about the attributes of the sword principle, he put it at the end. He could clearly feel that the secular sword principle could not be compared to the Destruction Sword Principle at all. Especially the attributes that were out of his control. They seemed to be changing all the time, which made Chen Hao feel that they were useless. But Xiao Yuyu actually said that the secular sword Dao was the most powerful. How could Chen Hao not be shocked? That's right. You heard it from Grandpa. What's wrong? What did your grandpa say? Grandpa said that the secular sword principle is the most powerful because it is the most difficult to comprehend, and is ever-changing. It can also be said that it is the combination of various sword principles. The secular sword principle usually refers to the secular world, but it means human emotions, which are various states of mind. The other sword principles, such as the Destruction Sword Principle, can only exert their true power in the state of mind that can destroy everything in the world. The Heartless Sword Principle, on the other hand, needs to be ruthless and cut off all emotions. They are all single and pure states of mind. The secular sword principle, on the other hand, contains thousands of states of mind. Yu Yu's hidden ability is the heartless sword principle. Hee. Ahem. Is the secular sword principle really so powerful? Heartless. You said that you cultivated the heartless sword principle? Yes. So you mean that you can only cultivate it if you have a heartless state of mind? And as your realm increases, it will become more and more. Theoretically, yes. Hee. How are you worried about Yu Yu? Don't worry. Although Yu Yu cultivated the heartless sword principle, Yu Yu felt that it didn't affect her at all. That state of mind would only appear when she was in battle. Moreover, being heartless doesn't mean that she has to be heartless. In fact, the classification of sword principles is just a general direction. Different cultivators, even if they comprehended the same sword principle, would eventually evolve into their own sword principles. They are the same, but there are small differences. Alright, let's watch the match. At this time, Leng Yihan and Chu Qingtian had already started their battle. The destruction sword essence was wreaking havoc in the entire arena. Every sword light contained a chilling destruction aura. The terrifying space and lightning profound mysteries were also present, complementing each other. Chen Hao's eyes were fixed on Leng Yihan. He wanted to find something on Leng Yihan, who was in battle mode, but his powerful soul perception was still unable to find anything. Since he's comprehended the destruction sword Dao and possesses the profundities of space and lightning, it isn't strange. It seems like these two elemental energies are the foundation for the comprehension of the destruction sword Dao. Chen Hao pondered in his heart, and then he started to seriously observe and analyze the battle between the two of them. Chu Qingtian's strength was without a doubt. It was also within Chen Hao's expectations. Although Leng Yihan had displayed the legendary destruction sword principle, he did not have the upper hand at all. The difference in realm and the difference in absolute power was a fatal flaw. However, it was obviously impossible for Chu Qingtian to defeat Leng Yihan quickly. Moreover, what surprised Chen Hao was that Leng Yihan did not seem to have any intention of fighting for a long time. Every move was extremely violent, and he would rather be injured than continue to attack. It was as if he was forcing Chu Qingtian to risk his life. This did not make sense. How he knows that he is going to lose. He should not have exposed his destruction sword principle. Moreover, he seems to be forcing Chu Qingtian to use his ultimate move. If he did not expose it, even if he met Gu Xing or Wu Ruochen, he could still win by surprise. This is really strange. Do you think he is doing this for you? The innocent and cute Xia Yuyu was extremely intelligent. Her cultivation realm was also high, so she naturally saw through Leng Yihan's current thoughts. Although it was said jokingly, Xia Yuyu knew that it was very likely that this was Leng Yihan's true thoughts. Otherwise, there was no reason for him to reveal his ultimate move in a battle that he was going to lose. Don't talk nonsense. He is so good to me. If one day I really have that kind of inclination, let's see if you can still joke about it. Focus on the battle. Maybe he is doing this for you. As if. Xia Yuyu's lips curled up. After objecting, she did not say anything else. Her mind was immersed in the battle between the two. In the huge arena, Leng Yihan did not care about the blood at the corner of his mouth. He fiercely closed in on Chu Qingtian. At the same time, he stabbed out with the mid-tier spiritual sword that clearly contained the power of lightning. Streaks of blue lightning spun wildly under the mysteries of the space attribute. Like a whirlpool, the terrifying sword light that contained the destruction sword intent blasted towards Chu Qingtian. Break for me. Chu Qingtian had unknowingly put on a black gold glove. The glove was covered with exquisite and mysterious runes. His right hand drew an arc in front of him and punched towards Leng Yihan's terrifying sword light. Boom boom boom. The sword light was extinguished, and the fist shadow was shattered. At this time, Leng Yihan followed up with 3 consecutive strikes. Each strike was more violent than the last, and each strike was faster than the last. Even the space vibrated violently, as if it was being torn apart. The sword aura was even more terrifying. After the 3 strikes, Leng Yihan's body suddenly exploded. An even more terrifying sword aura condensed on his body. His expression was cold, and his gaze was firm and stubborn. He seemed to be using all his strength. The energy around his body was instantly pushed to the limit. The corner of his mouth trembled violently, and another stream of blood was forced out. Whoosh! The 5th level of the chaotic lightning sword, Sky Piercer? Chun Hao was slightly moved when he saw Lung Yihan condense this sword aura with great difficulty. He knew very well that the chaotic lightning sword was Chun Shue's specialty. Chun Shue had only cultivated the 5th level of Sky Piercer. But Lung Yihan was able to condense Sky Piercer while pressuring Chu Qingtian with his sword aura. This was something that Chun Shue could not do. At least, when Chun Hao and Chun Shue were separated, Chun Shue could not do it. So strong. Lung Yihan is actually so strong. This is much stronger than the battle between Chun Hao and Wu Ruochen. It's a pity that Chu Qingtian is too strong. If Lung Yihan could hide his strength, he could definitely win if he used this technique against Wu Ruochen and Gu Xing. Good. Since you've forced me, Chu Qingtian, to this extent, I'll fulfill your wish. Fist of shattering mountains and rivers. Chu Qingtian sensed the terrifying killing move contained in Lung Yihan's continuous attacks. His expression finally changed. The viciousness in the depths of his eyes were well hidden, but at this moment, a trace of it flashed as he used one of his killing moves. He did not use his killing move because he wanted to make the battle between him and Lung Yihan go out of control. And now, the time had come. Fist of shattering mountains and rivers was one of Chu Qingtian's strongest techniques. Under the effect of the upper-class spiritual weapon, the black gold trap, it could triple the combat power. He believed that this punch was enough to kill Lung Yihan. The premise was that the referee did not have the time to save him. Of course, he believed that the sect leader had already dealt with the referee. Moreover, even if someone had doubts in such a short time, they would not be able to find anything. After all, it was very difficult for the referee to estimate whether this move could kill the opponent. Without absolute confidence, he could not easily interfere. After all, the winner had not been decided yet. Once interrupted, what if the person who was saved was not convinced? Following Chu Qingtian's punch, the spiritual qi of heaven and earth within a radius of 1,000 feet started to roll violently. A huge but condensed fist broke through the air, bringing with it a terrifying fist intent that could destroy mountains and rivers. The strong, domineering, and terrifying aura caused waves of exclamations in the martial arts arena. Everyone stared at the arena nervously and held their breaths. Everyone knew that this move would determine the winner. Just based on the aura alone, everyone knew that Lung Yihan was going to lose, and it might be a very tragic loss. Third update. Finally made it. Wuxian will continue to work hard tomorrow. Please give me a subscription and monthly ticket. Thank you. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.